Damn it, I'm doing it. I'm actually going to fight. The piercing sound of the intercom echoed through the bright lights of the arena. Next up for the exhibition match, Wang Rin from the school team versus Yi Li from Class 9, Grade 12. Both participants, please begin warming up. You step onto the stage in 10 minutes. I sat in the locker room, staring at my hands. My head was spinning. I had just traveled to this world. Memories flooded my brain like a tidal wave, forcing me to make sense of this new reality. This was a world of high-level martial arts. My predecessor, the original Yi Li, was a quiet, honest guy with mediocre talent but a happy family. He even had a childhood sweetheart. On paper, he looked like a winner. But the memories told a different story. He was miserable. And now, I was stuck in his body, about to fight a school-level exhibition match. Yi Li, your opponent is my boyfriend. You're no match for him. Forfeit now, do you hear me? A sharp, annoyed voice broke my concentration. I rubbed my temples and looked up. A girl in a green floral dress stood in the doorway. She had a sweet face, but it was twisted into an expression of pure impatience. This was Shun Lian, the childhood sweetheart. But she wasn't the kind of supportive girl you see in anime. She spent her days belittling Yi Li and brainwashing him into doing her bidding. She was a master manipulator. I frowned. What kind of terrible luck was this? Of all the people to be stuck with, I got her. Yi Li, I'm talking to you. Shun Lian's voice got colder. Wang Rin is a substitute on the school team. He's at the first order, 5th level. You just reached the 3rd level 2 days ago. How do you expect to fight him? I'm telling you to forfeit for your own good. Do you understand? So, I muttered. My head was throbbing. Today was the Linhai High School exhibition match. Members of the school team fought regular students. Win or lose, both sides got a massive payout of spiritual medicine. The original Yi Li had fought hard to get one of the few spots available. It was supposed to be a good thing. But he got matched against Wang Rin, Shun Lian's boyfriend. The rules were simple. If one person forfeited, the other got a double portion of the medicine. Plus, quitting would ruin my academic record. The school didn't want cowardly lizards who were too afraid to fight. If you couldn't face a classmate, how could you face the terrifying beasts threatening humanity? Shun Lian asking me to quit wasn't for my own good. She was trying to rob my future to feed her boyfriend. It was disgusting. So give me your match token. Shun Lian stepped closer, her hand outstretched. She looked confused. Usually, one word from her was enough to make her tool obey. I'll say it again. Wang Rin needs that medicine to break through. Give me your token. Now. Dumbass, I sneered. I reached out and slapped her hand away. The old Yi Li might have been her doormat, but I wasn't. I wasn't going to take this crap. Suddenly, a translucent screen flickered in front of my eyes. Ding. Detected verbal abuse toward a childhood sweetheart of 10 years. Evil points plus 500. Evil system loaded. In this world, the strong humiliate the weak. Perform evil acts recognized by the system to earn points. Current skills: Flowing Water Fist, Great Success 78%, Cloud Piercing Spear, Beginner 36%. Current evil points: 500. Points can be used to increase skill progress. Evaluation: Your infamy is currently unknown. I froze for a second. Then, a grin spread across my face. My golden ticket had arrived. Ditamas. Shun Lian stammered. Her face turned red with shock. How dare you? Yi Li, I don't have time for this. Give me the token, or I'll never speak to you again. Perfect. That's 2 pieces of good news in one day. I laughed, closing the system panel. You're just a piece of used goods, Shun Lian. Do you really think you can decide my matches for me? Is your brain filled with trash? Verbal abuse toward a childhood sweetheart. Evil points plus 300. Shun Lian stood there, stunned. She couldn't believe the person she had controlled for a decade was talking to her like this. You called me used goods? Her lips trembled. You dare insult me? I'm insulting a moron, I said coldly. I'm going on that stage, and I'm going to beat your boyfriend into the dirt. As for you, turn left out the door and go to the hospital. Get your head checked. Verbal abuse toward a childhood sweetheart. Evil points plus 200. I'm not sick, Shun Lian screamed. Her face was flushed, her chest heaving with rage. She stared at me for a few long seconds before her voice turned icy. Fine. Keep acting tough. Once you're on that stage, Wang Rin is going to make you regret ever being born. She turned and stormed out toward the spectator stands. I could hear her muttering under her breath about how ungrateful I was. I didn't care. I pulled out my phone and blocked her number on everything. Life is too short to deal with people who have undeveloped brains. I checked my panel. I had 1,000 evil points. The system's judgment seemed strict, but because the original Yi Li had loved her for 10 years, my insults carried more weight. Every word I said shattered her ego. I had 5 minutes until the match. According to my memories, the gap between me and Wang Rin was huge. The original Yi Li had planned to just last a few rounds and then surrender to get the medicine. But things were different now. I looked at my points and felt a surge of confidence. I wasn't going there to lose. Thinking about Shun Lian's arrogant attitude made a fire burn in my chest. I wasn't the man who had occupied this body before. I loathed people like her and Wang Rin from the bottom of my soul. If I lost here, I'd never be able to look at myself in the mirror again. I spent my past life bowing to bosses. I wasn't about to start acting like a coward in this one. I wanted to slaughter. I smirked and waved my hand. The blue light of the system screen expanded in front of me. Restraint is for the weak, and fear is for losers. System, I whispered, level me up. The numbers began to spin as my evil points drained away. 100 points disappeared, and my level 1 flowing water fist hit maximum mastery. Another 800 points vanished, and my level 2 cloud-breaking spear technique reached its peak. A golden notification flashed. My cultivation level had broken through to level 1, grade 5. I had 100 points left. My cells began to boil with a frantic, joyful energy. It felt like I had spent years practicing these moves day after day, grinding until they were part of my DNA. My blood surged with power. There was no discomfort, only a natural, explosive growth in my physical strength. This was the beauty of the system. I felt like a bird ready to take flight. I was perfect. Right then, the intercom crackled to life. Match 5. Yi Li from Class 9 versus Wang Rin from the school team. Both contestants, please take the stage. Perfect timing. I stood up and grabbed a heavy spear from the weapon rack. A sharp, dangerous aura erupted from my body. I gripped the shaft tight and headed toward the tunnel. The sun was blinding as I stepped out. The arena was packed with shouting students, media crews with cameras, and stern-faced school leaders. Wang Rin was already on the stage, wearing his signature blue team uniform. He waved to the crowd, soaking in the cheers. The audience was already writing me off. They expected a massacre. Match 5 is starting, someone yelled. What's there to see? Another student grumbled. The team members have been one-shotting everyone all day. I bet this ends in under a minute, a third added. I didn't blame them for their lack of faith. To a regular student, a school team member was an untouchable monster. They had better techniques, higher levels, and some even had awakened talents. We were playing 2 different games. Shun Lian was sitting in the stands, her eyes cold. I could practically hear her thoughts, hoping I'd be beaten so badly I wouldn't be able to get out of bed. Wang Rin stood in the center of the ring, looking triumphant. He watched as I climbed the steps in my white training gear, the black iron spear slung across my back. I looked at him with total indifference. Lian told me you refused to forfeit, Wang Rin said, his voice full of mock pity. I guess it's true. You really have lost your mind. Usually, you hide the moment you see me. Did you take the wrong medicine today? A bitch and a dog, I said, a thin smile playing on my lips. Truly a match made in heaven. A notification popped up. Insulting a grade 5 warrior gave me 10 evil points. It was a small amount, but every little bit counted. Wang Ren's smile vanished instantly. His eyes turned dark and murderous. You really are looking for a beating, he hissed. He drew a long sword from his back and pointed the tip at my throat. Let me remind you, this is a challenge match. Even if I cripple you today, the school won't hold me responsible. Don't waste your breath explaining rules everyone knows, you idiot, I said. I slammed the butt of my spear into the floor. And close your mouth. If you say one more word, I'm going to make you fly. Wang Ren's face twisted into a cruel grin. Fine. I was going to go easy on you, but now? I'm going to make sure there isn't a single inch of you that isn't bruised. Start, the referee shouted. The air exploded. Before the sound of the whistle could even fade, I was gone. I became a white blur, my feet tearing across the stage. Hundreds of pairs of eyes widened in shock as I closed the gap in a heartbeat. I thrust the black spear forward, the tip gleaming with a cold, lethal light. It looked like a dragon tearing through the sky. Cloud-breaking spear technique. Wang Ren's sneer was still frozen on his face when the wind pressure hit him. He felt the literal breath of death on his skin. His pupils shrunk to pinpricks. He barely had time to bring his sword up in a desperate block. There was a deafening crack. My spear shattered his sword like it was made of glass. The momentum didn't stop. The spearhead punched straight through Wang Ren's right shoulder, the sound of snapping bone echoing through the silent arena. Blood sprayed in the air. The force of the blow lifted him off his feet and sent him tumbling backward. He crashed into the edge of the stone platform, stone splintering under his weight. A guttural, agonized scream tore from his throat as he clutched his mangled shoulder. He hadn't even seen me move. I had told him I'd make him fly, and I had kept my word. The entire arena went deathly silent. The students were frozen. Up in the VIP seats, the teachers and officials stood up, their faces masks of disbelief. A school team member had just been one-shot by a regular student. I didn't stop to admire my work. As Wang Ren hit the ground, I lunged forward again. My past life had taught me one very important lesson. Always finish what you started. The heavy thud of bone hitting stone echoed through the arena. Wang Ren tried to lift his head, but I didn't give him the chance. I reached out, my fingers locking onto his skull, and slammed his face back down into the dirt with every ounce of my strength. The impact was massive. Wang Ren's vision must have been swimming with stars. His body curled up instinctively, his hand reaching for the spear still buried in his shoulder, desperate to pull it out. I didn't let him. I brought my foot down hard, my shoe crushing his hand back into the pavement. He was still conscious, trying to circulate his internal energy to buy himself some time. He squinted up at me, but all he saw was my shadow looming over him. I stared back with cold, dark eyes. I spread my arms wide, pulling back for a strike. Wang Ren recognized the stance immediately. It was the opening move of the flowing water fist. Fear finally broke through his pride. He didn't care about his reputation anymore. Yi Liat. He was too late. My fists fell like a thunderstorm. One after another, I rained blows down on his head. Stones splintered and flew into the air. The entire stage began to tremble under the force of my assault. My flowing water fist had reached perfection, and I was letting it loose. A notification pinged in my ear. Asterisk crushing a fellow martial artist in public. Evil value plus 200, asterisk. I didn't slow down. My punches became a blur, hitting faster and faster until Wang Ren's body finally stopped struggling. I stood up straight, my chest heaving slightly. My face felt hot, my expression fierce. If this is the level of a school team member, stop coming out here to embarrass yourself, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the silent arena. You're a waste of space. I reached down, yanked my spear out of his shoulder, and started walking off the stage. Asterisk publicly humiliating a defeated opponent. Evil value plus 500, asterisk. Asterisk target self-confidence has collapsed. Evil value plus 1000, asterisk. Asterisk congratulations. Cultivation point path unlocked, asterisk. The entire stadium was deathly quiet. Yi Li wins, the referee finally shouted, his voice sounding hollow in the stillness. As I stepped off the platform, the crowd finally snapped out of their shock. A roar of disbelief erupted from the stands. People were screaming, cursing, and jumping to their feet. They couldn't believe a regular student had just one-shot a member of the elite school team. That spear strike had been impossibly fast. In the middle of the chaos, Shun Lian sat frozen. It looked like he was rooted to his seat. He stared at the stage, his face pale. He had given Wang Ren all my information to ensure an easy win, yet Wang Ren had been slaughtered. Even as a regular member of the team, Shun Lian knew he couldn't have beaten Wang Ren that easily. He bit his lip so hard it bled, his fists trembling. How had I done it? Up on the VIP balcony, the teachers were just as stunned. It was common sense that team members, even substitutes, were leagues above regular students. Principal Li, this student, Yi Li, he's a real talent. The Class 1 teacher muttered, pushing up his glasses. Principal Lee smiled. His blood chi is around the first stage, 5th level, same as Wang Ren. But his techniques are incredible. Both of those low-level skills have reached the state of perfection. To do that at his age takes incredible insight and hard work. The principal turned to a younger woman standing behind him. Teacher Yang, he's from your Class 9, right? He clearly deserves a spot on the team. Why wasn't he recommended? Yang Shan broke into a cold sweat. Principal, during the test 2 weeks ago, he was only at the 3rd level. I had no idea he was hiding this much strength. She was terrified. Principal Lee was famous for his temper when it came to protecting talent. He had once beaten a teacher senseless for targeting a student. But the truth was, Yang Shan liked me. She just thought I was a hard-working, honest kid with mediocre talent. She never expected me to be a hidden monster. I'll look into it, Principal Lee said, his eyes following my retreating figure. I handed the spear back to the dazed referee, gave a polite nod, and walked into the tunnel. I looked sharp, my back straight, moving with a calm confidence I never had before. He's good, the principal whispered. Since he beat Wang Ren, why not give him Wang Ren's substitute spot? Another teacher suggested. The provincial exchange is in 2 weeks. We need the best. The Class 1 teacher, who coached Wang Ren, didn't even argue. He just nodded. It was settled. I didn't know any of this was happening. I just collected my spirit medicine subsidy and caught a cab home. I locked myself in my room, ignoring the world to focus on the screen floating in front of my eyes. Infamy Level 1. Your infamy is currently unknown to almost everyone. A notification flashed across the screen. Upgrading your infamy will grant rich rewards. I checked my infamy points. I had 1,800 now. Before I went all in on my skills, I had barely half that. It turned out that gambling everything on a single move really was a form of wisdom. Using my predecessor's foundation, I had spent 900 points to push 2 martial arts techniques to the perfection level. There was no discomfort or awkwardness. It felt like the techniques were an extension of my own limbs. On top of that, it had boosted my cultivation by 2 full ranks. The system's power was terrifyingly efficient. So, as long as I committed evil acts recognized by the system, I could use those points to upgrade my martial arts and my level. I looked at the numbers again. Beating up Wang Ren had netted me nearly 2,000 points. Was this system really built entirely on the suffering of others? I rubbed my chin, lost in thought. Then, I noticed a new feature had unlocked. Cultivation leveling path enabled. Current level, First Order, Level 5, 2%. Status, Upgrade available. My thoughts raced. Upgrading my techniques to perfection had naturally dragged my cultivation up to Level 5 as a byproduct. If I focused points directly into my cultivation now, the results would be even better. System, add points, I muttered. I decided to test the waters with 100 points first. Ding. Consuming 100 infamy points to boost cultivation. Warning, no external supplements detected. Your cultivation speed is currently as slow as a snail. Cultivation in progress. Cultivation complete. Current level, First Order, Level 5, 50%. Evaluation. Due to the lack of cultivation gains, this boost is only equivalent to half a year of bitter training. My face went dark. You're telling me the efficiency changes based on outside factors? Why didn't you say that earlier? It felt like I'd just wasted a high-tier pull on a trash gotcha banner. Thank God I hadn't gone all in this time, or I would have suffocated from the regret. Supplements, right? Fine. I opened the exquisite iron box containing my spirit medicine subsidy. Inside was a small white porcelain bottle filled with body-priming liquid. For a first-order fighter, this single bottle was worth 2 months of grueling work. It was precious stuff. I unscrewed the cap. A thick, refreshing fragrance filled the room, instantly clearing my head. I didn't hesitate. I downed the entire bottle in one gulp. The cool liquid slid down my throat, and I felt the energy begin to stir. System. Again. Asterisk ding. Consuming 1,000 infamy points to boost cultivation. Asterisk. Asterisk high-grade resource detected. Cultivation speed increased by 20%. Asterisk. Accelerated cultivation in progress. Asterisk cultivation complete. Blood chi significantly increased. Asterisk. Current level, First order, level 8, 90%. Asterisk evaluation. The medicine provided timely assistance. This boost is equivalent to 8 years of bitter training. Asterisk. I felt my blood chi skyrocket. My eyes burned with a sharp light, and my skin took on a healthy, metallic luster. My muscles and bones felt reinforced, humming with power. In just a few breaths, I had smashed through 3 levels. I was now 1 step away from level 9. I was stunned. According to my memories, even top-tier geniuses struggled to reach this level before entering a martial arts university. I had gone from a total nobody to the elite tier in a single afternoon. It was ridiculous. Then again, looking at the math, 8.5 years of bitter training only got me to level 8. My natural talent was clearly garbage. It's fine, I whispered to myself. As long as I keep adding points, my talent doesn't matter. I closed the panel. To the outside world, I was a prodigy. That was all that mattered. I had 700 points left, which was enough for now. Tomorrow, I go to the school's library and pick out some new techniques. Relying on just 1 fist style and 1 spear style made me too one-dimensional. I was like a glass cannon, all attack, no utility. I needed movement techniques and defensive skills to stay balanced. The day's excitement finally caught up to me. Fatigue washed over me like a wave. I had been through a lot since waking up in this world. I silenced my phone, listened to the wind outside the window, and drifted off to sleep. The next morning, the cypress trees swayed in the cool breeze as I walked toward Linhai High School. I was wearing casual clothes as I headed up to the 3rd floor. I straightened my sleeves and walked into the classroom. I took my seat in the back row, right by the window, the classic spot for a protagonist. The room went quiet. My classmates were staring at me with complicated expressions. I knew that look. It was the way people looked at the quiet kid who suddenly reveals a hidden talent. Because of my predecessor's loner reputation, no one dared to come over and talk to me. Well, almost no one. Brother Yi, you're finally here. I looked up to see Fong Ming, my only real friend in this class, running toward me. What's up? I asked. Not me, it's Teacher Yang. She's looking for you, Fong Ming said, waving his hands dismissively before his face lit up. But forget that. Dude, yesterday was insane. I'm still shaking. Fong Ming was level 4, which was decent for our grade, but even he had been no match for Wang Ren. And I had ended Wang Ren in seconds. You beat a school team member. Aren't you hyped? He asked, buzzing with energy. I stretched lazily and stood up. It was all right. Come on, let's go find Teacher Yang. Fong Ming froze. He couldn't understand why I was so calm. To him, beating a team substitute was a life-changing event. To me, it was just a way to get points. As we walked up to the 4th floor, Fong Ming couldn't take it anymore. Brother Yi, seriously? Nothing to say? That was a school team sub. Nope, I said, patting his shoulder. I pushed open the office door and walked in, leaving Fong Ming standing in the hallway, questioning his entire reality. I heard him mutter something about whether he was the one overreacting before he pulled out his phone to process the shock. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick message to my dad. Dad, I beat a school team substitute. The phone vibrated almost instantly. It was a rapid-fire succession of messages. Really? Holy crap. My son finally made something of himself. I've already contacted your 7 aunts and 8 uncles. Tonight, I'm hosting a banquet for every martial arts family in Linhai City. I just told your grandfather the news. He's tearing up the family genealogy book as we speak. He said he's starting a brand new one beginning with you. Standing nearby, Fong Ming caught a glimpse of the screen and let out a sigh of relief. He realized it wasn't just him. It was my dad who was overreacting. He looked at me with a mix of pity and respect, convinced that I was just being my usual, humble self. To him, my arrogant display during yesterday's fight must have been a one-time fluke. I'm just kidding, Dad. Fong Ming typed back on his own phone, shaking his head. I'm only level 4. How could I possibly beat a team sub? He shoved his phone back into his pocket, still feeling it vibrate with his father's excited replies. Inside the office, Teacher Yang Shan put down her documents and looked up at me with a warm smile. You're here. Sit down. I called you in because I have some good news. Good news. I pulled a chair over and sat down casually. Yang Shan nodded. After watching your match yesterday, Principal Lee decided to give you a special appointment. You're replacing Wang Rin as a substitute for the school team. Are there any perks? I asked. Of course, she said, clasping her hands together. You'll get a private cultivation room and the freedom to arrange your own training schedule. That means you don't have to attend regular classes anymore. However, you'll need to follow the team's specific training plan. Plus, you'll have access to the third floor of the library pavilion and a monthly allowance of spiritual medicine. What do you think? She watched me closely, clearly expecting me to jump for joy. Instead, I just gave her a faint smile. Sounds all right, I said. I was short on martial arts techniques and resources, so I wasn't about to turn this down. Then it settled. Yang Shan pulled a silver waist token from her desk and handed it to me. This is the official school team badge. It also acts as an access card for most facilities. As I took the token, her smile faded slightly. One more thing. Since you took Wang Ren's spot, his friends on the team might have a problem with you. There's a gap between your current strength and theirs, so try to avoid conflict. Don't get yourself hurt. She paused, looking a bit uneasy. Especially that girl, Shun Lian. She seems to have a huge grudge against you. When she heard you were joining the team, she fought against it tooth and nail. When you see her, maybe just walk the other way. It wasn't her imagination. My smile actually widened when she said that. I see, I nodded. I understand. Good. Yang Shan sighed, looking relieved. If you have nothing else to do, head over to the training building and pick a room you like. You can go straight there. Shun Lian is waiting for you. Shun Lian? My brow twitched. Her again. Yang Shan nodded helplessly. She insisted on helping you get settled. The other teachers agreed. Just be careful. If she tries to cause trouble, just back down for now. Understand? Back down. I let out a short laugh, but didn't argue. I'll head over now. I grabbed the token and stood up. My steps felt unusually light as I walked out. Behind me, I heard Yang Shan muttering to herself about how much I had changed and how confident I seemed. I pushed open the office door and found Feng Ming waiting. Let's go, I said. Where to, he asked. The training building. I tossed the silver token in the air and caught it. I'm on the school team. Teacher Yang wants me to check out the new facilities. As we walked toward the training building, Feng Ming's expression shifted to one of shock. When I told him Shun Lian was the one meeting me, he couldn't believe it. This was the girl who usually treated me like a stray dog. Why would she suddenly be so helpful? He looked like he wanted to warn me that something was wrong, but he kept biting his tongue. In the past, whenever he said anything bad about Shun Lian, the old me would get defensive and start an argument. Finally, he couldn't hold it back. Brother Yi, if Shun Lian asks you to test a new technique again, don't do it. He spoke fast, like he was afraid I'd cut him off. It's not that I don't want you to help her, but she has no self-control. Last time, she literally cracked several of your bones. The martial arts exams are coming up. We can't afford injuries right now. He looked at me earnestly. He was basically begging me not to be her punching bag again. In his memory, Shun Lian constantly used me for practice, leaving me covered in bruises every time. To him, a level 7 student using a level 3 student as a test dummy was just a cowardly way to find a moving sandbag. Don't worry, I said with a smirk, stepping into the building. I know what I'm doing. The provincial exams were less than 2 months away. If I wanted to get into a top-tier academy, I needed to reach level 2 to be safe. My priority was farming villain points, but the system hadn't given me any new prompts yet. I had to figure it out myself. So far, beating people up seemed to be the most reliable method. We crossed the lobby and reached the stairs to the second floor. That's when I saw her. Shun Lian. She was wearing a light blue training suit, her eyes full of arrogance and her teeth clenched in anger. The moment she saw me, she broke the silence. Yi Li, she hissed, her voice dripping with resentment. You finally showed up. Lead the way, I said, tilting my chin up. Lead the way, my ass. Shun Lian stomped her foot, pointing a finger directly at my nose. Yi Li, don't think I've forgotten about how you insulted me yesterday. Feng Ming froze. He hadn't expected her to start screaming immediately. Then, a look of realization crossed his face. He assumed I must have just spoken a bit too loudly, and she had taken it as an insult. He stepped forward, trying to play peacemaker. Classmate Shun, Brother Yi is just here to see the facilities. If you don't want to help. See the facilities? He can see hell for all I care. Shun Lian interrupted, her voice turning shrill. She glared at me with pure hatred. You used some dirty trick to beat my boyfriend, and now you're trying to steal his spot on the team? You're nothing but a pathetic little thief. She kept spitting out insults, each one more toxic than the last. She was completely fearless, and she had a reason to be. She had every reason to be arrogant. Shun Lian was a rank 1, level 7 martial artist with a C-grade talent. In our school team, she was one of the heavy hitters. Even though I'd beaten Wang Ren, everyone assumed I was level 5 at best. To her, I shouldn't have been able to handle a level 6, let alone someone at her level. She was practically begging me to lose my mind and swing at her. She wanted a reason, a perfect excuse to beat me so badly I couldn't get out of bed, let alone take the upcoming exams. But looking at my old, timid reputation, she probably didn't think I had the guts. She decided to strike first. She didn't care that my parents had treated her like family when they were alive. All she felt was a burning need to vent her rage. She had even cleared out the other team members. The building was empty. Just the three of us. No matter how loud I screamed later, no one would hear me. In her mind, my sins were unforgivable. I had blocked her on social media. I had insulted her. I had beaten her boyfriend and stolen his spot. To her, I deserved to die. Yili, she sneered, her voice cold and sharp. Look at you. You really think you're worthy of the school team? You should have just died along with your parents. What did you say? Fang Ming's face turned bright red. He was fuming. He clenched his fists, his inner energy surging. He was only a peak level 4, but he was ready to go down swinging for me. Just as he was about to lunge forward, I reached out. My hand, steady and calm, pressed down on his shoulder. Fang Ming looked at me, his eyes pleading. He wanted me to see how vile she really was. He thought I was still blinded by my old crush on her. He thought I was going to swallow the insult like I always did. Brother Yi, even if you like her, you have to wake up, he whispered. I didn't say a word. I just shook my head slowly. Fang Ming sighed, his shoulders slumping in disappointment. He assumed I was choosing to endure the humiliation again. He started to say something about how there were plenty of other girls in the world, but the words died in his throat. I disappeared. 1 second I was standing next to him. The next I was right in front of Shun Lian. Her eyes widened in shock. I didn't hesitate. I pulled my arm back and drove my fist forward like a meteor crashing into the earth. Thud. The sound was heavy and dull as my fist buried itself into her soft abdomen. The force was massive. Her feet left the ground instantly. She flew backward across the lobby and slammed hard into the stairs leading to the second floor. She hit the steps with a sickening crunch. Blood sprayed from her mouth, staining the white marble. System, you have severely injured your childhood crush of 10 years. Villain points plus 2,000. Fang Ming stood frozen, his head slowly turning toward the stairs. I didn't look back at him. I calmly adjusted my cuffs and started walking toward her. My footsteps were rhythmic on the floor. If I asked for help, just help, I said, my voice flat and indifferent. Stop talking so much nonsense. System, Shun Lian's fear has reached its limit. Villain points plus 1,000. Total villain points, 3,700. Shun Lian let out a pathetic, strangled whimper. She looked at me like I was a demon crawled out of hell. Ignoring the agonizing pain in her gut, she scrambled backward on her hands and knees, desperate to get away. I shot her a cold glance, and she instantly clamped her mouth shut, her eyes filling with tears. She couldn't understand it. She was level 7. How could she not even see my movement? She hadn't even had time to activate her talent before being broken. And more than that, she never dreamed I would actually hit her. Where is my room? I asked. TH 3rd floor. She stammered, trembling violently. The room on the far left. I can lead you there. Please, just spare me. I shook my head. Her sudden shift from arrogance to begging was pathetic. I turned away, losing all interest in her. Fang Ming, let's go, I called out. Fang Ming snapped out of his trance. He looked at me, then at the girl bleeding on the stairs, and swallowed hard. If he remembered correctly, Shun Lian was level 7, and I had one-shot her. Was I level 8? Level 9? He realized then that his friend had truly changed. He hurried after me, his breath hitching. As we passed her, he couldn't help but ask, Brother Yi, what about her? She won't die, I replied calmly. Leave her. I I stepped over her without a second glance. I hadn't killed her, but I'd shifted her internal organs around enough to make sure she remembered this day. The harvest of points was good, though. It almost made the annoyance worth it. I really was a good person, wasn't I? We reached the third floor. My private cultivation room was at the end of the hall. I swiped my ID card, and the heavy door slid open. The room was massive, about 200 square meters. It was spotless and filled with high-end equipment. I saw arrays carved into the walls designed to gather spiritual energy. Once activated, they would skyrocket my cultivation speed. There was a strength tester, a blood intensity scanner, and even a mental capacity monitor. No wonder Teacher Yang was so proud of this place. This was top tier. Outside, a room like this would cost thousands of credits a day. I'd just saved a fortune. Fong Ming followed me in, staring at my profile. He looked like he was struggling to process reality. In the past, I was a doormat for Shun Lian. I would have given up my life if she asked. Now, I had nearly broken her in half. He suddenly pinched his own thigh, hard. He winced. It wasn't a dream. Brother Yi, he started, his voice trembling. What happened to you today? What do you mean? I asked, looking around the room. He waved his hands around, trying to find the words. Why did you stop? Putting up with her. I narrowed my eyes. Why should I put up with her? She was pointing at my nose and insulting me. She basically had "please hit me" written across her face. I just gave her what she wanted. Fong Ming nodded slowly, though he still looked dazed. Then, curiosity got the better of him. Brother Yi, what is your actual level? Yesterday you were level 3. Today you're one-shotting school team members. If I didn't see it, I wouldn't believe it. I ran my hand over the energy lines on the wall and answered casually. I just hit level 8. The truth was, I was actually at the peak of level 8. Since I had just broken through that afternoon, calling myself a level 8 was accurate enough. I didn't see much point in hiding my strength from Fong Ming. I trusted him, and besides, I probably wouldn't stay at this level for very long anyway. But even with my modest answer, Fong Ming looked like he'd seen a ghost. No way. Brother, he stammered, his eyes wide. Are you telling me you've been hiding your power this whole time? Why? If you'd shown this earlier, the school would have treated you like an ancestor. Okay, maybe that's an exaggeration since we have monsters like Senior Sister Jiang, but still. He was getting more excited by the second, pacing back and forth. Even without comparing you to her, you're a top-tier genius now. In the whole school team, there are maybe only 2 people stronger than you. Senior Sister Jiang and the Vice Captain, Lu Yangda. That's it. Why are we even talking about being a substitute? Forget that. I'm going to find Teacher Yang right now and make sure he gives you a permanent spot. He started counting on his fingers, muttering to himself as he bolted toward the door. Close the door on your way out. I called out, waving a hand. You got it, boss, he shouted back. Once the door clicked shut and I was alone, I walked over to the strength testing machine. It had been a while since I'd checked my raw power, and I wanted to see where I stood. I settled into a deep stance, centering my weight. I felt the true chi circulating through my veins, coiling like a spring. I threw a right hook. My fist cut through the air like a cannonball, slamming into the testing pad with a heavy thud. The digital display flickered rapidly before settling on a number, 645 kilograms. I raised an eyebrow. That was higher than I expected. It already surpassed the physical limits of a normal human from my past life. I guess I really wasn't normal anymore. I walked over to the control hub of the cultivation array and slotted my silver waste token into the groove. The wall carvings began to glow, humming softly as the air grew heavy with spiritual energy. The concentration was rising fast. It was time to spend. I sat down in the center of the room. With the array active, this was the perfect moment to level up. I checked my interface, 3,700 villain points. System, spend 1,000 points. Level up my cultivation. A notification pinged in my mind. C-rank Spirit Dragon array detected. Cultivation speed increased by 10%. Accelerating. I felt a surge of heat. My blood started to boil, and the chi in my body expanded violently, filling every corner of my limbs. It felt like 7 years of bitter training had been condensed into a single heartbeat. Breakthrough complete. Current level, level 9, peak. I stood up, feeling the raw power vibrating under my skin. This array was incredible. It wasn't quite as potent as rare spiritual medicine, but it was consistent. Now I understood why the school team was so much stronger than the regular students. It was a total massacre of resources and talent. I walked back to the strength tester. I wanted to see the difference. I took a deep breath, pressing my palm lightly against the pad to find the center. Then, in one fluid motion, I twisted my hips, drove my foot into the floor, and exploded. The sound was deafening compared to the last hit. The screen flashed. 885 kilograms. The standard for a level 9 peak practitioner was usually around 800 kilograms. I had blown past that. I smiled to myself. It made sense. Others had to build their foundation through slow, messy practice. I was building mine through the system, perfect, precise, and optimized. What I didn't know was that this machine was linked to the school's central database. My name had just rocketed to the number 2 spot in the entire school, sitting right underneath the legendary genius, Jiang Qingzhu. Meanwhile, at Linhai Hospital, the air smelled of bleach and misery. Wang Rin was propped up in a hospital bed, his face pale as a sheet. Sitting beside him was a young man in a green team uniform, Lu Yongda, the vice captain of the school team. Brother Lu. Wang Rin started. If it's about the substitute spot, save your breath, Lu Yongda interrupted, his voice cold. That was Principal Li's call. My hands are tied. Wang Rin bit his lip, his knuckles turning white. So that's it. Yili just takes what's mine. Lu Yongda looked at him with pity. He had been at the level 9 peak for 6 months and held a lot of sway. But even he couldn't overturn the principal's orders. Usually, coaches consulted him or Jiang Qingzhu before making changes, but this time, they had simply been told, Yili is in. Look, Lu Yongda said, patting Wang Ren's shoulder. The spot is gone. But since you've been a good teammate, I'll do this for you. I'll bring Yili here and make him apologize to your face. We'll call it even. Wang Ren's eyes flashed with resentment. He had tried to crush Yili, only to be beaten like a dog. An apology wasn't enough, but it was a start. Fine, Lu Yongda sighed. I know you sent Shan Lian to deal with him. I saw you clearing people out of the training building. By now, she's probably broken enough of his bones that he won't be leaving his bed for a month. I've played blind for you this far. What more do you want? Wang Ren stayed quiet. He was imagining Shun Lian, a level 7, absolutely dismantling the level 5 Yili. He expected the kid to be in a wheelchair by now. Lu Yongda pulled out his phone. He had gotten Yili's number from the coach. He dialed it, ignoring Wang Ren's smug expression. The phone rang twice before a calm, steady voice answered. Hello? Who is this? Is this Yili? Lu Yongda said, his tone authoritative. I'm Lu Yongda. You can call me Brother Lu. I need to talk to you about something. Don't know you. Not interested. Click. The dial tone echoed in the silent hospital room. Lu Yongda stared at his phone in total shock, his blood pressure spiking instantly. Beside him, Wang Ren looked just as stunned. Nobody in that school hung up on Lu Yongda. He was a big deal, or at least he thought he was. I always carried myself like a big deal. At least, that's how Lu Yongda saw himself. In his mind, when a nobody like me picked up his call, I should have been shaking. He expected me to beg for forgiveness and come running to apologize. Instead, I hung up. The silence in the hospital room was heavy. Lu Yongda's face turned a shade of ugly purple. Brother Lu, Wang Ren stammered, sensing the tension. Yili never used to be like this. He must think he's a god now that he's on the school team. He's completely lost his mind. Lu Yongda didn't say a word. His expression was dark as he redialed my number. The second I picked up, he barked into the phone. Yili, I'm the vice captain of the school team. I have business with you. Speak, I said. I let a bit of a smirk bleed into my voice. You went too far in the match yesterday, Lu Yongda said, his tone dropping an octave. You stole Wang Ren's spot. It was a huge blow to him. I want you to come here and apologize to him. Then we can call this settled. I see, I replied flatly. Lu Yongda's tension eased. I could almost hear the smug grin forming on his face. He probably thought I was finally showing fear now that I knew who he was. Good, he continued, his voice dripping with condescension. After that, go find the instructor. Tell him you're resigning from the team for personal reasons. We have an exchange match coming up soon. A newbie like you joining now would only mess up our... I get it now, I interrupted, cutting him off with a light laugh. So the school team is just full of self-important idiots like you, huh? There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. I could practically feel the air in that hospital room turning cold. What did you say? Lu Yongda hissed. I said you're an idiot, I repeated calmly. And I suspect the rest of your team are idiots, too. I didn't care about his reaction. I was already bored with the conversation. Fine, fine, Lu Yongda laughed, though it sounded more like a growl. I've dealt with punks before, but you're a special case. If you have the guts, then you. Click. I hung up on him again. Back in the hospital, Lu Yongda was trembling with rage. He slammed Wang Ren's phone onto the floor, shattering it into 1,000 pieces. Yili, you're a talentless piece of trash, he screamed. Just you wait. He turned on his heel and stormed out of the room, radiating pure killing intent. Wang Ren stared at his broken phone, wanting to ask for a replacement, but too terrified to speak. Then, a thought hit him. Wait, Yili sounded perfectly fine on the phone. His voice was steady, strong. Did Shinlian fail? Wang Ren wondered. Did he slip away? He shook the thought off. It didn't matter. Yili had just declared war on Lu Yongda. One was a level 5, the other had been at the peak of level 1 for half a year. The outcome was obvious. Yili was a dead man. Meanwhile, I arrived at the Tangshu Pavilion. This was the school's library for martial techniques. The first 2 floors held level 1 and some level 2 skills. It was where I had learned my flowing water fist and cloud-piercing spear. But today, I headed straight for the 3rd floor. The 3rd floor was reserved for teachers and elite students. I swiped my ID card and walked past the envious glares of the students downstairs. I wasn't worried about Lu Yongda. If I needed more villain points, I'd just have to beat them out of him later. For now, I needed to get stronger. I stood before a massive electronic screen and started scrolling through the available techniques. Mountain Crushing Punch, 100,000 credits. Snake Step Movement, 120,000 credits. Burning Breath Cultivation, 200,000 credits. Everything looked mediocre. Maybe the system had spoiled me, but none of these felt right. They were mass-produced. Average. I needed something better to match the power I felt growing inside me. I also needed a breathing technique. That was the key to reaching level 2. These techniques were ranked from S down to D. The best one here was a C rank, and it cost 300,000 credits. I only had about 100,000 to my name. Are you picking a technique? A soft voice asked. I turned. A girl with round glasses and a scholarly vibe was standing there, tilting her head at me. Who are you? I asked. You Qian, she smiled. I'm on the school team too. I saw your match yesterday. You're Yili, right? Level 5. I nodded politely. Just looking. Do you need something? You look disappointed, she said, walking up to stand beside me. Are the techniques here not to your liking? The quality is poor, I said honestly. She chuckled. Of course they are. The real treasures are kept as rewards for top students. They don't just put the good stuff on the shelf for sale. I shrugged. Fair enough. My mistake. I turned to leave, but she called out to me. Wait, there aren't any complete treasures here, but we do have some fragments of high-level techniques. Are you interested? I stopped. I am. Give me a second, she said, tapping on the screen. Let me look them up for you. A moment later, a new name flashed on the display. The screen flickered, displaying a new name, Heavenly Stellar Void Treading Art. It was a fragment, a broken remnant of a technique. The price tag read 100,000 credits. What do you think? Do you want to buy it and take a look? Yu Qian asked tentatively. As soon as the words left her mouth, she looked like she regretted them. 100,000 credits wasn't a small amount of money. She bit her lip, probably worried I'd think she was trying to scam me. From the look on her face, I could tell she was one of those people who constantly meddled in others' business with good intentions, only for it to blow up in her face. Sure, I said. Before she could second-guess herself, I thanked her and swiped my card. The transaction went through instantly. All I had to do now was go to the front desk to collect the printed copy. I'll go grab it for you, she chirped. She seemed thrilled that her advice had actually been taken for once. She sprinted toward the counter, but I followed right behind her. Part of me wondered if she was just trying to steal a peek at the manual. You're pretty loaded, huh? She joked as we walked, dropping 100 grand on a whim. I glanced at her, my expression flat. Both my parents are dead. That money was my entire life savings. The color drained from her face. I felt a familiar ping in my mind. Villain points plus 200. The guilt was radiating off her in waves. I decided to lean into it. If this manual turns out to be useless, I'll be eating grass for the rest of the month. Villain points plus 100. Her breathing hitched. She gave me a forced, shaky smile. Don't worry. It'll be useful. I know more about techniques than anyone in our grade. Trust me. We reached the desk and collected the manual. I flipped through the pages, and my heart sank, not because it was difficult, but because it was a disaster. This wasn't just a fragment where the end was missing. This was like a game of Mad Libs. There were missing sentences on every page, entire paragraphs of blank space, and diagrams that looked like someone had spilled ink over them. It was completely unlearnable. I had basically thrown 100,000 credits into a wishing well and heard no splash. I'm so sorry. Yu Qianqian looked like she wanted to crawl into a hole and die. How did this happen again? I was just trying to help. She was spiraling. In her mind, she had just bankrupted an orphan. I ignored her for a second, focusing on the calm blue interface that appeared only in my vision. Heavenly Stellar Void Treading Art. Fragment not learned. Upgrade available. Current villain points, 3,000. I suppressed a grin. I had found a diamond in the trash. This was a dual-purpose technique, movement and defense. According to the intro, it had 3 major stages. At high levels, it allowed the user to shift their physical body between reality and illusion, making most attacks pass right through them while boosting speed to insane levels. Yu Qianqian was still hovering, watching my face for a reaction. It's actually a top-tier level 2 technique, she stammered. Most level 3 arts aren't this sophisticated. If you could learn it. Okay, I'm lying. I'm sorry. Even an immortal couldn't learn it in this state. Please, don't look at me like that. I'll pay you back. I'll cover your losses. She was clutching her face in shame, unable to look at me. Yu Qianqian, I said, my voice low and teasing. Don't you know that apologies are supposed to be done in a Dejiza position? Her eyes went wide. Her face turned pale. Really? Do I have to? Of course not. I'm joking, I said, waving it off. But if you really want to apologize like that, I won't stop you. I expected a laugh. Instead, she bit her lip, hesitated for a second, and then, *thumpstar. She dropped to her knees right there on the floor, pressing her forehead to the ground in a perfect, submissive bow. Her chest pressed against the floorboards as she trembled. Since the 3rd floor was mostly empty, no one else saw it, but the sight was intense. Forcing a young girl to kneel. Villain points plus 100, *. That's a bit much, I said, genuinely surprised. I was kidding. I didn't actually mean for you to kneel. But since your form was so perfect, I guess I have no choice but to forgive you. She scrambled up, looking embarrassed but relieved. It's the least I could do after making you waste your savings. I've never met someone who trusted me so easily, and I ruined it. It was my choice to buy it, I said, shrugging. Besides, I never said I couldn't understand it. You really can? She looked touched, clearly thinking I was just acting tough to make her feel better. I get it. Yi Li, from now on, if I find any rare techniques, I'll share them with you. I promise. Sure. Go do your thing, I said, dismissing her with a wave. Once she was gone, I turned back to the system. She wasn't wrong. This manual was a mess. It was basically a fill-in-the-blanks test with no answer key. No normal person could ever practice this. But I wasn't normal. I had hard work, dedication, and a massive golden finger. I had 3,100 points. If I had spent them all earlier to force a breakthrough to level 2, I'd be broke right now. I took a deep breath and decided to test the waters. Spend 500 villain points. In my experience, 500 points was equivalent to about 2.5 years of bitter, soul-crushing practice. The numbers on the panel began to spin. Ding. Consuming 500 villain points to level up level 2 technique. Heavenly Stellar Void Treading Art. Warning. Lack of required resource, Cloud Mist Essence. Lack of complete mental mnemonics. Training speed reduced by 70%. Spend 2,000 points to deduce the full technique and remove debuffs. Too expensive, I muttered. I didn't have the points to spare for a full deduction, and besides, who knew if the system would actually fill in the gaps correctly? Asterisk no. Force the upgrade. Asterisk. Asterisk system message. Your progress is now comparable to a 70-year-old grandmother running a full marathon. Pushing through the bottleneck. Asterisk. Training complete. Heavenly Stellar Void Treading Art. Entry level, 60%. Asterisk side effect. 2.5 years of mental fortitude gained. Blood vitality slightly increased. Asterisk. I frowned at the screen. A 70% speed reduction? A grandmother in a marathon? The system's sarcasm was getting out of hand. But as I felt the new rhythm of the technique flowing through my legs and the strange, ethereal shift in my skin, I knew one thing for sure. It worked. Even without the proper resources or a full manual, I could force progress. It was like taking a multiple-choice test without reading the book and still getting the answers right. This was why adding points was the ultimate path to becoming a king. I was going to force this breakthrough whether the system liked it or not. I took a deep breath and raised my hand, circulating my inner energy through my meridians. A faint white mist began to drift from my palm. My skin, already pale, turned almost translucent. I could feel it. If I took a hit with this hand now, the damage would be reduced by more than half. This was the true power of a level 2 technique, damage mitigation. Yu Qianqian hadn't been exaggerating earlier. She said most level 3 techniques weren't as sophisticated as this one. At the time, I thought she was just trying to save face after our fight, but now I saw the truth. The only downside was the cost. Just transforming the skin on one hand drained a massive amount of my energy. Without a proper breathing technique to replenish my reserves in real time, I wouldn't last long in a fight, even at the peak of level 1. Plus, 500 villain points had only gotten me to the entry level. Usually, that many points could max out a level 2 technique. I was stuck. I didn't know where to find Cloud Mist Essence, and I didn't have the time or money to hunt for it. The provincial exams were breathing down my neck. Fine, I whispered. Let's go all in. I pulled up the system panel and poured every remaining point into the Heavenly Stellar Void Treading Art. Asterisk system message, continuing upgrade. Current debuff, training speed reduced by 70%. Asterisk. As I delved deeper into the technique, memories of martial arts stories from my past life flickered in my mind. I began to bridge the gaps, mental images of legendary skills merging with the system's logic. Asterisk ding. You have integrated insights from your past life. Training speed increased by 30%. Asterisk. Asterisk system message. The 70-year-old grandmother has put on premium running shoes. She is now sprinting across the track. Asterisk. Asterisk training complete. Consumed 2,400 villain points. Asterisk. Equivalent to 12 years of bitter cultivation. Heavenly Stellar Void Treading Art. Level max. Perfect. A cloud of white vapor escaped my lips. My blood felt like it was boiling in a cauldron, my vitality surging. My bones popped and rang like bells, and my spine felt as strong as a dragon's back. I was standing right at the threshold of level 2. One more step, and I'd be there. I felt like I was using a cheat code. Just yesterday, I was a nobody, a mediocre student who spent 3 years barely mastering a level 1 weapon technique. Back then, I couldn't even dream of getting into a top university. But now? My foundation was terrifyingly solid. To any outsider, I looked like a genius who had spent decades refining his breath and skills. Average level 1 fighters wouldn't even be a challenge anymore. I exhaled slowly. My confidence for the provincial exams was skyrocketing. But before that, there was the high school exchange competition next week. Those events were always a spectacle, and Fong Ming had been buzzing about it for days. If I performed well there, I could get rare techniques as rewards or even get scouted by the province's top martial arts university. That university was the dream. They had resources high schools couldn't imagine, and they even partnered with cities to let students hunt mutated beasts in the wild for materials. To get in, I had to be the best. I had to reach level 2. That bottleneck stops 50% of martial artists in their tracks. But for me, as long as I had villain points, I could blast through any debuff. I'd figured out the system's logic by now. It rewarded me for others' pain or my own pleasure. It sounded dark, But in a world where the strong eat the weak, I wasn't going to complain. I checked my status. After maxing out that technique, I was down to 200 points. I was broke again. I need someone to farm, I sighed, closing the manual. I left the library and headed back to the training building. The school provided private rooms for the team, and since I lived alone anyway, I figured I'd just sleep there. I walked up the stairs, entered my room, and flopped onto the bed. I needed a nap. I was just drifting off, feeling good about my progress, when a knock echoed through the room. It was 6 p.m. "Who is it?" I asked, my eyes snapping open. "It's me, Yu Qianqian." I hopped up and opened the door. The girl behind the glasses looked a little awkward, her eyes darting around. "Did you find a rare technique already?" I asked with a grin. "That was fast." No, it's something else." Yu Qianqian waved her hands frantically, her face turning a deep shade of red. She looked incredibly uncomfortable. Watching her reaction, I already had a pretty good guess about what was going on. "If you have something to say, just say it," I told her. She fidgeted, her hands twisting together in front of her. "Captain Lu wants you to go to his training room. It's the room on the far left of the 4th floor." "Captain Lu?" I repeated. "Lu Yongda. He's the vice captain of the school team," she explained. Her eyes flickered with hesitation. She struggled with herself for a few seconds, then gritted her teeth. "Actually, forget it. Don't go. I don't think he has good intentions." I raised an eyebrow. This was getting interesting. "Not good intentions? Why do you say that?" "He said he wants to show you that there's always someone better out there. He wants to teach you the rules of the school team." Yu Qianqian let out a long breath, looking relieved to finally have said it. It clearly took a lot of courage for her to warn me. She pushed up her glasses and asked, "Did you have a problem with him before?" "A little one," I admitted with a shrug. "I knew it." She bit her lip, looking angry. "He's incredibly petty. Don't go there. He's not alone either. He has his 2 lackeys with him. They're both on the team. One is level 1, stage 9, and the other is stage 8. Plus, Lu Yongda himself is at the peak of level 1. If you go, you're walking into a trap. They only act this way because Senior Jiang doesn't step in. They're going to ruin the team with their little clique." The more she talked, the angrier she got. I just nodded. "I get it. Lead the way," I said. "Lead the way?" She stared at me, stunned. "No, I'm going to find the instructor. If a teacher is there, he won't dare touch you." "Wait, are you seriously going?" I didn't answer. I just walked past her and waved a hand over my shoulder. My pace was steady as I headed straight for the 4th floor. Yu Qianqian stood there, eyes wide. She couldn't understand why someone would jump straight into a fire. To her, I was just a stage 5 rookie. She didn't know I was hunting for points. A few seconds later, I was standing in front of Lu Yongda's training room. I could hear voices laughing inside. "Hey Lu, you think that kid actually shows up?" "Who knows? He sounded pretty arrogant on the phone this morning. Maybe he's dumb enough to try." Another voice sneered. "He won't come. He's a stage 5 substitute. If he actually shows up, I'll fight him with one hand tied behind my back. If Yu Qianqian can't bring him here, we'll just go find him ourselves." I listened to their jokes and took a quiet breath. Then, I lifted my leg and slammed my foot into the door. Boom. The wooden door exploded. Splinters flew everywhere as the frame shattered. The 3 guys inside jumped, their laughter dying instantly. In the center was Lu Yongda. He was sitting on a training bed, staring at me in shock. His 2 lackeys, both wearing school team uniforms, scrambled to their feet. They hadn't expected me to be this aggressive. No words, no warnings, just a kicked-in door. "You really are a troublemaker," one of them muttered. They recovered quickly, smirks appearing on their faces. I could feel the spiritual energy beginning to circulate in their bodies. Lu Yongda's lips curled into a grin. "I didn't think you'd be brainless enough to actually show up. Destroying my door? I can use that alone to get the teachers to kick you off the team. Do you think a stage 5 student is special? To the school, you're just a piece of trash. But me? I'm at the peak of level 1. Who do you think the school cares about more?" His friends laughed along with him. They started walking toward me, their eyes cold and predatory. The atmosphere in the room grew heavy. Lu Yongda watched me closely, waiting to see fear or panic on my face. But I was calm. My heart was steady, and my eyes were focused. Lu Yongda started to speak. I didn't let him finish. I vanished from the doorway. In the blink of an eye, I appeared right in front of the two lackeys. The closest one gasped, his eyes bulging. He never expected me to move that fast. I pulled my right arm back. My blood surged, and my spiritual energy exploded like a volcano. I threw a punch straight into his gut. Crack. Over 1,000 kilograms of force slammed into him. He didn't even have time to scream. He coughed up a spray of blood and flew backward, crashing through a section of the wall. Asterisk target heavily injured. Villain points plus 700. What the hell? The second guy finally reacted. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw pure terror in his eyes. He was panicking. In a desperate move, he crossed his arms in front of his chest to block, hoping to buy time for Lu Yongda to help. But my flowing water technique was already at its peak. My movements were fluid, one strike leading perfectly into the next. Before he could even brace himself, my second punch was already flying. Even before I practiced the new technique, my punch force was nearly 900 kilograms. Now, it was well over 1,000. My fist hit his crossed arms like a cannonball. His guard was blown wide open. I heard the distinct sound of bones snapping. He shrieked and stumbled back, but I didn't let him go. I reached out, my hand moving like lightning. I grabbed him by the face and slammed his head straight into the concrete floor. Target heavily injured. Villain points plus 800. The impact was massive. The guy went limp instantly. Yu. Lu Yongda was trembling now. He stared at me, unable to process how a stage 5 martial artist could have this much power and speed. Taking out 2 high-level teammates in seconds? Even he couldn't do that. I stood up slowly and straightened my sleeves. I looked at Lu Yongda, who was still frozen on the bed. Your turn, I said. My voice was cold. I wasn't going to give him a chance to beg. What level are you really? Lu Yongda screamed, his face pale with fear. You're not stage 5? You were hiding your strength yesterday. He scrambled to his feet. He knew there was no way out of this. If he wanted to survive, he had to fight for his life. So what if I was hiding my strength? I thought, watching Lu Yongda's face pale. I'll show you exactly how big the gap is between us. Lu Yongda let out a guttural roar. A strange green light shimmered across his skin as he activated his martial talent. His muscles began to swell and bulge, his already massive frame expanding even further. This was his bone and muscle strengthening technique. He slammed his foot into the ground with a deafening thud, cracking the concrete, and charged at me like a mobile fortress. I stayed perfectly calm. I didn't even blink as he barreled toward me. I dropped my center of gravity, pulling my right arm back like a drawn bow. I could feel the muscles in my arm compressing, power building like a coiled spring. My internal energy surged, flooding into my veins until my skin glowed with a faint white light. This punch was going to be leagues stronger than the last two. The entire floor trembled under Lu Yongda's heavy footsteps. In just a few breaths, he was right in front of me. His fist, the size of a stone mallet, tore through the air with the momentum of a runaway truck. Mountain-crushing punch, he yelled. Suddenly, my body felt light, almost transparent. A thin white mist curled around my skin. I activated the Tiangang Void Step. At that exact moment, Yu Qianqian finally burst into the room. She arrived just in time to see me reach out with a pale, almost translucent left hand. Lu Yongda's full power strike slammed into my palm. The impact should have been catastrophic, but it felt like a stone dropping into a deep ocean. I absorbed the force, letting my hand be pushed back just enough to redirect his momentum. Lu Yongda's eyes widened in pure shock. He couldn't understand what was happening. I let the force spin my body like a top, and as I came around, my right fist, loaded with all that stored energy, exploded forward. The air itself seemed to ripple like water. The sound of the impact was like a bomb going off. Lu Yongda's massive body was sent flying backward, smashing through his bed frame and burying him deep into the shattered wall. Dust and debris settled. The vice-captain of the school team lay there, head slumped, blood leaking from his nose and mouth. He was out cold. I exhaled a long trail of white vapor and pulled back my fist. Standing straight, I turned and gave a polite nod to Yu Qianqian, who was standing in the doorway with her mouth hanging open. Yu Qianqian had rushed up here to save me. Even though we'd just met, she considered me a friend because I hadn't complained when she accidentally got me into trouble earlier. She was terrified these three would break me, knowing I was just a substitute. But the scene before her made her doubt her own eyes. I stood there, calm and composed, while Lu Yongda's two lackeys lay groaning on the floor, and the vice captain himself was embedded in a wall. She was internally screaming. In less than a minute, I had taken down 2 high-level Stage 1 fighters and 1 peak Stage 1 martial artist. This wasn't the power of a Stage 5 student. She started comparing me to Jiang Qingzhu, the school's top genius, a girl from a powerful family who had broken through to Stage 2 long ago. I noticed her staring and broke the silence. How should we handle this? I asked, gesturing to the 3 bodies. Yu Qianqian blinked, trying to find her voice. It's fine, she stammered. They came looking for trouble. Even if they're badly hurt, the school won't punish you for defending yourself. My eyes lit up. I loved this martial arts world. Back in my old life, the school would have just punished everyone involved regardless of who started it. So, I clarified, as long as someone picks a fight with me, I can hit back however I want. Yu Qianqian hesitated. I mean, as long as you don't go too far, I guess. I nodded, looking back at the 3 unconscious guys. Should we just leave them here? Of course not, she said, finally regaining her composure. I'll call the instructor to handle the cleanup. You go ahead if you have things to do. I thanked her and turned to leave, but she called out one last thing. Wait, Jiang Qingzhu, our captain, will probably want to talk to you in the next day or 2 to check your status. It's protocol. Got it, I said, walking away. Behind me, I heard her whisper to herself, another monster has arrived. I went back to my private training room on the 3rd floor and locked the door. The feeling of an impending breakthrough was becoming unbearable. That fight had pushed my internal energy to the limit. I didn't have a high-level breathing technique yet, but I couldn't wait any longer. I could always switch techniques later. I sat on the bed and pulled up my system interface. Asterisk target heavily injured. Villain points plus 1,000. Asterisk. Asterisk Lu Yongda's confidence shattered. Villain points plus 500. Asterisk. Fear detected from 3 targets. Villain points plus 1,500. Total villain points, 4,700. I grinned. It wasn't as much as I got from Shen Lian, but it was a massive haul. It was more than enough. I crossed my legs, closed my eyes, and focused on the panel. Current level, Stage 1, Grade 9, Peak. Goal set, breakthrough to Stage 2. Beginning cultivation. Stage 2 was the Jade Tendon Realm. It required fusing internal energy with the meridians and bones to skyrocket physical strength. Because of the system, I already had the equivalent of 20 years of hard work under my belt. I took a deep breath, and the process began. Breaking through to Stage 2 was supposed to be a breeze with the system's help, but things didn't go perfectly at first. As I started the process, a notification popped up. I had gained a cultivation buff that increased my speed by 50%. I began using my internal energy to strengthen my meridians and nourish my blood. However, since I didn't have a breathing technique to replenish my energy, the process slowed down significantly. Suddenly, a negative debuff appeared on my panel. My cultivation speed dropped by 20%, and another status effect hit me: irritability. The moment those words flashed, a wave of genuine annoyance washed over me. I was surprised by how real it felt, but I didn't let it shake me. I was just here to spend points and level up. I pushed through the frustration and kept going. After what felt like hours of persistent effort, the system notified me that a portion of my meridians had been fully reinforced. My blood energy surged. I had successfully broken through to Stage 2, Grade 1. My power and reaction speed skyrocketed. The system issued a final comment. The cultivation was a natural success and didn't cost much mental effort. Total cost, 200 villain points. As the text faded, my bones let out a series of sharp, clear cracks. My meridians transformed in an instant, glowing with a faint, jade-like luster. A powerful aura erupted from my body. My internal energy was now several times stronger than it had been just minutes ago. Even the fatigue from my earlier fight was completely wiped away. I felt like I was at my absolute peak. I exhaled a long breath of white mist. When I opened my eyes, a faint golden light flickered in my pupils. I raised my palm and circulated my energy. A wisp of ethereal white mist swirled around my fingertips, sinking into my skin. I could finally unleash the full power of the Heavenly Stellar Void technique. Yesterday, I could only neutralize about 50% of an opponent's force. Now, with just a thought, I could negate 70% of the damage from anyone at my level. I was becoming a literal tank. Anyone who tried to trade blows with me now would pay a heavy price. I looked at my hand and chuckled. I really was heading down the path of a total brute. I noticed something else, too. My energy was slowly recovering just by breathing. It wasn't as fast as having a high-level technique, but it was a hallmark of a Stage 2 warrior. In video games, I used to think breathing to heal was broken. Now that I was breathing to recover mana, it felt perfectly normal. I was officially in the Jade Tendon realm. If I ran into Liu Yongda and his goons again, I wouldn't even need my special techniques. I could take all 3 of them down in 30 seconds flat. Now, I really needed a breathing technique. Without one, every time I leveled up, I'd probably get stuck with that 20% speed penalty. Over the next 2 days, I spent most of my time in the library. Things were surprisingly quiet. Yu Qianqian was right. The school didn't punish me for what happened to Liu Yongda. In fact, the instructor who found them was so impressed that he petitioned the school to make me a permanent member of the team. Vice Principal Li Haohan agreed immediately. He even wanted to chat with me to bond, but he decided not to disturb me while I was buried in books. On my way to the library this morning, I ran into Wang Ren. He was fresh out of the hospital, covered in bandages and literal metal plates. When he saw me looking perfectly fine, he looked like he'd seen a ghost. "How are you, okay?" he stammered. Liu Yongda was supposed to. He stopped himself, but it was obvious. He expected me to be a broken mess. Instead, I was glowing with health and calm energy. "Why wouldn't I be okay?" I asked casually. "Liu Yongda didn't touch you?" Wang Ren blurted out. I let out a small laugh. "Oh, him? I took care of him." "Took care of him? What does that mean?" I shook my head with mock pity. "I guess you guys didn't end up in the same hospital." I took a step toward him, hoping to harvest a few more villain points, but Wang Ren turned tail and bolted. I watched him scramble away, feeling a bit offended. I'm not a villain, right? Was that really necessary? The provincial exchange match was only a week away. There were only 6 spots on the official team, and I didn't really care whose spot I took. All I cared about was the A-level scholarship the instructor got for me. 50,000 credits had already hit my bank account. Finally, I had enough to buy a decent breathing technique. I spent hours scrolling through the options in the library's digital catalog. A C-level Crimson Flame technique was 45,000. Another was 50,000. There was a B-level fragment for 70,000, but it was incomplete. If I bought that, I'd have to waste a ton of villain points just to fix it. After 2 days of searching, my decision paralysis kicked in. I decided to stop browsing and just go squeeze the school for a free one. Surely they wouldn't be stingy with a star student. As I walked toward the training building, I noticed people giving me strange looks. Most of them looked terrified. It turns out that while the school didn't punish me, rumors had spread like wildfire. And the stories were getting ridiculous. The gossip was everywhere. People were saying I was a team wrecker who had openly provoked my seniors. They called me arrogant and claimed I used dirty tricks to put 3 teammates in the hospital. Some said I was only Stage 1, Grade 5, so there was no way I could have one fairly. They whispered that I was trying to sabotage the school right before the big match. It was the classic telephone effect. By the time the story reached the general student body, I had become a scheming, power-hungry monster. I quickly became the hottest topic on campus. My name was on everyone's lips, and not in a good way. Because the rumors about my ruthless methods were so extreme, students who believed the lies started looking at me with genuine fear. Honestly, no matter where you go, people who spread rumors are the absolute worst. I shook my head, feeling helpless. I didn't really care, though. There was only 1 month left until the provincial exams. Once we graduated, we'd all be scattered across the country to fight exotic beasts. I'd probably never see these people again. There was no point in getting worked up over a fake reputation. Suddenly, a sound like heavenly music rang in my ears. Ding, reputation level increased. Ding, reputation level increased. Asterisk level 1 notoriety reached. Your infamy is starting to spread. Golden quality reward has been issued. Asterisk. While I was getting rewards, the atmosphere in the captain's office on the 5th floor of the training building was tense. Shun Lian sat in a chair with tears in her eyes, looking across the wooden desk at the girl opposite her. She looked pitiful and wronged. Yili really can't stay, Shun Lian sobbed. He didn't just hurt Captain Liu. He even attacked me before that. If I hadn't reacted quickly that day, I'd be lying in a hospital bed right now. A girl with shoulder-length black hair sat behind the desk. Her features were delicate, but her expression was cold. She was focused on a manual titled Spear Technique Essentials. After listening to the accusation, Jiang Qingzhu's face didn't flicker. She just flipped to the next page. You should tell Teacher Wang about this, Jiang Qingzhu said flatly. Telling me is useless. Shun Lian grit her teeth. She had spent so much effort spreading rumors just for this moment. She wanted the strongest girl in school to punish the person she hated. Senior Jiang, you know Teacher Wang never stops this kind of thing, Shun Lian argued. But Yili is different. The inter-school competition is coming up. By starting internal fights now, he's clearly trying to ruin our futures. He already sent Vice Captain Liu to the hospital. If you don't step in, no one can stop him. Jiang Qingzhu finally looked up. She stared at Shun Lian with calm, piercing eyes. Student Shun Lian, she said quietly. Your acting is terrible. Shun Lian's face turned bright red. Senior, Get out. No, Senior, I'm serious. I won't say it again. Jiang Qingzhu's brows furrowed slightly. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. Shun Lian didn't dare to argue further. Her face was pale as she hurried out and slammed the door behind her. Once the room was silent, Jiang Qingzhu tapped her fingers on the desk. After a moment, she picked up her phone and dialed a number. You Qianqian? It's me, she said politely. Are you in the training building? I heard you're close with Yili. Could you ask him to come see me? Thanks. Meanwhile, back in my private training room, I was buzzing. SSS level talent? I locked the door and pulled up my system panel immediately. A notification was flashing, golden quality gift bag available for opening. Show me the gold, I whispered, my eyes shining. Everyone knows that in any gacha system, gold is the dream. It represents the highest tier of rewards. The system had promised me rich rewards for increasing my notoriety, and it wasn't lying. Open the bag. Boom. A pillar of golden light erupted from the screen, so bright it hit the ceiling. A massive wave of energy rippled out from my body, expanding in every direction. The entire training building shook under the pressure. Outside, teachers, students, and even people miles away looked up in shock. A brilliant blue light shattered the clouds above the school, creating a massive, glowing phenomenon in the sky. In the administration office, Principal Li Haoan was sipping tea. He choked, spraying water everywhere as he bolted upright. The other teachers stared at him, confused. Principal? What's wrong? Li Haoan didn't answer. He ran to the window, staring at the training building with pure terror and awe in his eyes. An A-level martial talent has been born, he whispered. Only someone at his level could recognize the signs. B-level talents didn't cause this much noise. As for S-level, he didn't even dare to think it. Our province hadn't seen an S-level student in decades. A-level was the only logical explanation. Even so, A-level meant 1 in 10,000. Li Haoan's hands shook. This was the second A-level student in this graduating class, alongside Jiang Qingzhu. It meant our school was finally going to rise again. Who in the school team hasn't awakened their talent yet? He barked at the teachers behind him. Well, Yili just joined 2 days ago, one teacher replied. He hasn't awakened one yet. Yili, Li Haoan's shock turned into wild joy. That kid, just how many secrets is he hiding? Another teacher, Lu Shangshan, frowned. Principal, are you planning to kick Yili out? He's been a troublemaker lately. It might be for the best. Li Haoan spun around, glaring at the man. Lu Shangshan, your nephew got beaten because he was weak. That's his problem. If you try to target Yili, I'll fire both you and your nephew. A student who can beat 3 people at his own level without a talent? Do you have any idea what he is now that he has won? Inside the room, I felt a refreshing coolness washing through my soul. It felt like I was evolving. The phenomenon lasted for nearly a minute before fading away. When I opened my eyes, a faint golden glow lingered in my pupils. Asterisk congratulations. You have obtained SSS level martial talent, Undying Spirit, asterisk. Asterisk Undying Spirit, level 1, a survival type talent. Your soul nourishes your body. As long as your mental will and stamina aren't completely depleted, your body will continuously repair itself until you are fully healed. This talent can be leveled up, asterisk. The description said that in ancient times, a primordial being had used this same power to terrorize the heavens. To follow in those footsteps, all I had to do was keep being the villain. I stared at the panel floating in front of me, my heart hammering against my ribs. The description was staggering. Spear Weapon Saint Body. It was an SSS level martial talent. It didn't just give me a slight edge, it granted a massive boost to my mastery of spears and staves. My cultivation speed for those weapons was now increased by 500%. I stood there in silence for a long time, trying to process it. In my memory, the highest tier anyone had ever reached was S level, and that was decades ago. Those people were called Children of Destiny. But in SSS level, out of nearly 10 billion people on this planet, I wasn't sure if you could find more than a handful. This wasn't just a silver lining to my recent troubles. This was a god-tier upgrade. I felt a strange, divine power coursing through my veins. I knew it would be strong, but this was terrifying. I realized then that I was practically invincible within my current rank. I rubbed my chin and let out a small breath. If I was going to be a cheater, I might as well be an invincible one. A series of knocks at the door snapped me out of it. I got off the bed, the golden glow in my eyes fading back to normal. When I opened the door, Yu Qianqian was standing there. Is something wrong? I asked. She looked like she wanted to ask about the strange phenomenon that had just occurred, but she hesitated. Senior Zhang wants to talk to you. I mentioned this a few days ago. Do you remember? I remember, I nodded. She turned to leave, then stopped. She looked conflicted, biting her lip before finally speaking up. There are a lot of rumors about you in school right now. Senior Zhang might ask you about them. Just tell her the truth. Don't be stubborn with her. I tilted my head. Why? Is she mean? No, Yu Qianqian sighed. She just hates bullies. She's also very rigid. If you act too aggressive, she'll probably try to teach you a lesson. I know you're talented, but she's been a rank 2 martial artist for 6 months. Her family is powerful, and her resources are top tier. She's one of the best in the entire province. There's no shame in bowing your head to her. She looked at me with genuine worry. After seeing me fight the last few days, she knew I wasn't the type to take a loss quietly. She was terrified that if we fought, the school team would fall apart before the exams even started. Don't be reckless, she pleaded. I don't want to see you get hurt. I looked at her worried face and felt a smile tugging at the corners of my mouth. I understand. Thanks for the warning. I walked past her and headed straight for the captain's office on the 5th floor. This was perfect. I was actually worried I wouldn't have enough villain points to spend. Now, a genius girl who hated bullies was practically delivering herself to me. The world is a cruel place, and people who are too picky about justice usually end up miserable. I decided I'd help her understand what real pain felt like. Behind me, Yu Qianqian watched me go. She felt a sudden, cold sense of unease, though she couldn't put her finger on why. Fearing the worst, she hurried off to find a supervising teacher. Inside the office, Jiang Qingzhu was looking at a monitor. Her cold, beautiful face showed a flicker of surprise. Full power, 885 kilograms, she whispered. The rumors about this new kid, Yi Li, were actually true. He had strength. Her teacher had told her that Yi Li was hiding his true power and was likely second only to her. Seeing the numbers, she had to agree. For a rank 1 martial artist to hit nearly 900 kilograms without elite family resources was incredible. Even she had only broken 1,000 kilograms back then because of her family's top-tier medicines and equipment. She understood why he was arrogant. She believed about half of the rumors. She didn't think he was a complete monster, but she also didn't think he was innocent. The fact that he had stayed hidden for 3 years told her he had a very disciplined, enduring mind. Still, he had sent Lu Yongda and his friends to the hospital. That was crossing a line. Jiang Qingzhu had a goal. She wanted to drive every single beast out of the country, and to do that, she couldn't afford a single defeat. She didn't want to waste time on school drama. She decided she would just give him a stern warning and tell him not to hit his teammates anymore. She sat back down at her desk and reopened a book titled Essentials of Spear Techniques. It was a priceless collection of insights from the Jiang family's masters. To a low-level martial artist, it was worth more than a high-rank combat manual. A knock came at the door. "Come in," she said, marking her page and closing the book. I stepped into the room. I kept my expression calm and polite, looking like a perfectly refined student in my white clothes. "Hello," I said with a faint smile. "I'm Yili. I heard you wanted to see me. Courtesy first, I thought. Violence later." I kept a polite smile on my face. Politeness has always been one of my better qualities. Jiang Qingzhu let out a soft hum, signaling for me to sit down across from her. Her voice was cold and professional as she spoke. "You recently joined the school team. Is there anything you're not used to yet?" Her directness caught me off guard for a second, but I didn't hesitate. "I'm not used to how many idiots there are," I said, sighing. Jiang Qingzhu's eyes flickered with a strange look. I started counting them off on my fingers. "There's Shun Lian, then Lu Yongda, plus his 2 lackeys. That's 4. If you count Wang Run, who just left the team, that makes 5. I looked her in the eye, crossing my fingers in front of me. "The team only has 7 people, including substitutes. I was honestly worried you'd be just like them." The room went silent. Jiang Qingzhu looked like her brain had short-circuited. She had probably never heard someone imply she was an idiot so directly to her face. Her brows furrowed, and a spark of genuine anger flared in her usually icy eyes. "I'm not like them," she said coldly. "So, Captain Jiang, you're admitting they're idiots?" I asked with a grin. "I didn't say that." "Why not just admit it?" I leaned back, taking my time. "You don't think you're the same as them, do you?" Jiang Qingzhu took a deep breath. She realized the conversation was spiraling away from her control. She had brought me here to warn me, to put me in my place, but I was leading her in circles. She pushed her messy thoughts aside and regained her composure. "I didn't call you here to discuss this," she said, her voice dropping to a frigid tone. "I'm here to notify you of something." "Notify?" I leaned against the back of the uncomfortable chair. We were the same age, yet she spoke like she was standing on a pedestal. It was annoying. "Go ahead," I said, not showing my irritation yet. "Someone reported you for maliciously injuring your teammates," she said, watching me closely. "I know there might be reasons for it, but I don't want to see it happen again. The provincial exams are coming. Everyone needs to focus on their future. You should spend your energy on cultivation, not on bullying the weak." She leaned forward, her clear eyes glowing slightly. A confident, powerful aura began to radiate from her. "If you really can't control your urge to fight," she said, her voice cutting like a blade, "you can come to me directly. I'll fix that problem for you." She was dead serious. She let her rank 2 aura leak out, clearly trying to intimidate me. The silence stretched for several seconds. She probably thought she had won. She probably thought I was scared. I looked up, my eyes locking onto hers. A heavy, crushing pressure suddenly flooded the room, centering right on her heart. I smiled. "Those are your words, not mine." I didn't care about her logic. She wasn't worth the breath. Based on the aura she just showed, she was likely at the 4th level of rank 2. Combined with her S-grade breathing technique and A-grade talent, she was a monster among her peers. People called her the greatest genius Linhai Hai had seen in 20 years. "You actually want to challenge me?" Jiang Qingzhu's brows knit together. A faint, icy blue light flickered in her eyes. She was trying to hide the flicker of unease rising in her chest. "The gap between rank 1 and rank 2 is bigger than you think. If a martial artist is defeated too easily during their rise, the blow to their confidence can ruin their future breakthroughs." She stood up, her aura exploding without restraint. Papers flew off her desk. The clock on the wall began to shake. "For the sake of your own mental state, leave this room now. I'll pretend you said nothing." The gold light in my eyes burned brighter. My own aura surged upward, meeting hers head-on. "You're also rank 2? Her eyes widened. "The report said I was rank 1 at most. Even if I was the strongest in that rank, I shouldn't have been a threat to her. So rank 1 wasn't your limit either." She shook her head, her expression turning even colder. "If you have this kind of strength, yet you still use it to bully those weaker than you, don't you feel any shame?" She was actually angry now. In her mind, I was a high-level fighter picking on defenseless teammates. It was the thing she hated most. What are you even babbling about? I interrupted. I stood up, looking her straight in the eye. You told me to find you if I wanted to fight, but now you just want to give me a lecture? I'm sorry, but I don't have time for your logic. You aren't qualified to teach me. A notification flashed in my mind. Villain points plus 200 for insulting the genius Jiang Qingzhu. Wow, the rewards for insulting her were huge. Jiang Qingzhu clenched her fists. I see. You really do need a lesson. If you're so determined to fail, let's change locations. I'll meet you at the training grounds in 5 minutes. Why wait? I grabbed the heavy wooden desk between us and flipped it with one hand, sending it flying straight at her. If you want to teach me, do it here. Jiang Qingzhu didn't flinch. She struck out with a palm, shattering the desk into a cloud of splinters and dust. Before the wood could even hit the floor, I lunged through the debris. She looked up and met my golden eyes. There was no fear in them, no hesitation. She wasn't panicked, though. She believed she could finish this in minutes. She stepped back, the icy blue light in her eyes turning her gaze into frozen springs. Reaching rank 2 at your age is impressive, she said, her voice sounding like cracking ice. But unfortunately, you cannot beat me. Her eyes turned completely blue, glowing with a divine, freezing light. The air in the room turned to frost. Jiang Qingzhu exhaled a heavy cloud of white mist. The moment it left her lips, the temperature in the room plummeted. The air around us turned brittle. Frost began to crawl across the walls in jagged, thin sheets. Within seconds, the entire office felt like the heart of a blizzard. It was 0 degrees, and the cold was still dropping, biting into my skin like 1,000 needles. In the middle of that thick, white fog, my movements started to fail me. My joints felt like they were being fused together with ice. Every step I took felt like I was wading through waist-deep mud. I was trapped in a giant freezer, and the frost was winning. It's over, Jiang Qingzhu said. Her eyes flickered with a cold light. She blurred toward me, closing the distance in a heartbeat. She didn't hesitate. She threw a palm strike straight at my chest. Bang! The moment her hand hit me, my body turned semi-transparent. A massive burst of white steam erupted from my skin, muffling the impact. That strike was strong enough to cripple any rank 2 martial artist, but I didn't even flinch. I absorbed the force and held my ground. Over? In your dreams, I sneered. I used the momentum of her own strike to spin my body like a top. I whipped my leg around in a clean, vicious kick, aiming right for her ribs. Thud! Jiang Qingzhu's expression shifted. It was a look of pure confusion. To her, it felt like she had punched a pile of soft cotton. There was nowhere for her strength to land. But before she could process that sensation, a tidal wave of power exploded from my shin into her gut. It hit her like a high-speed truck. The sheer force sent her flying backward across the room. Boom! She slammed into the wall, leaving a massive crater. Cracks webbed out from the point of impact, spreading across the concrete. She groaned, struggling to push herself up from the floor. She stared at me, her teeth clenched in pain. When she saw the steam rising from my body and my translucent skin, her pupils shrank. She recognized it. The heavenly astral void step, she whispered, her voice trembling with disbelief. It was a rare rank 2 martial art. Jiang Qingzhu had seen the manual in the school library, but it was just a collection of tattered, broken pages. She had even bought the fragments once, but the technique was so complex and the instructions so ruined that she could never even start the training. I didn't have a famous family or a master. She knew I must have found those same broken pages in the library. To her, it was impossible. How could someone learn a high-level technique from a few scraps? And I hadn't just learned it. Looking at the way the steam rolled off me and how natural my movements were, I wasn't a beginner. My skin had a faint, pearly glow. I had reached the state of perfection. Is he even human? She muttered. Her shock made her slow. She stayed down a second too long. That was her mistake. I appeared right in front of her face. She looked up into my calm, glowing golden eyes and couldn't help but ask, why? If you were always this strong, why didn't you say anything for 3 years? I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I pulled my arms back and leaned forward. A new aura began to flow out of me, smooth, continuous, and unstoppable. It was the flowing water fist, also at the level of perfection. The intent behind my strike felt like a surging river, carrying the weight of a flood toward her. Another perfect grade technique. Jiang Qingzhu took a sharp breath. She flicked her wrist, and a snow-white spear materialized in her hand. The weapon glowed with a treasure-like luster, instantly boosting her aura. It was a high-grade spiritual tool. My pressure was finally forcing her to take this fight seriously. Her gaze turned cold. She swung the spear like a dragon's tail, meeting my flurry of punches head-on. Asterisk bang. 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 Asterisk. Shock waves blasted through the room, shaking the frost off the ceiling. With my astral void step at perfection, I was nearly immune to her freezing aura. Every punch I threw was a hammer blow, intended to snap her spear in half. Under my relentless assault, Jiang Qingzhu was forced back, step by step. "You've already lost," she hissed, swinging the spear desperately. She was burning through her energy to keep the temperature dropping. The ceiling was now a solid block of ice. Even with my technique, the cold was starting to seep in. Her S-rank breathing technique allowed her to infuse her spear with frost that could freeze a person's meridians from the inside out. She believed that even if I looked fine now, my internal organs and veins were already being damaged. She wanted to turn this into a war of attrition. Crash. We traded another massive blow. Jiang Qingzhu skidded across the floor for dozens of feet before hitting the wall again. She spat out a mouthful of cold mist, her chest heaving. Her internal energy was churning violently. She figured that maintaining my transparent form must be draining me just as fast as her ice was draining her. She was a higher rank and had an S-class breathing technique to recover her energy. If we just kept clashing, she was sure the victory would be hers. "Do you really think you've won?" I laughed suddenly. "You have every resource advantage possible, and you're still struggling this much? I really overestimated you. If I had brought my own spear today, you'd be flying out the window by now." Jiang Qingzhu frowned, about to snap back, but I didn't give her the chance. I lunged at her again. This time, the white steam around me thinned out, and my body became solid. "There it is," she thought. Asterisk, his energy is running out. He can't keep up the technique. Asterisk. She didn't hesitate. She stepped forward and thrust her spear with everything she had left. Poochie. I didn't dodge. I didn't even try. I let the spearhead plunge straight through my shoulder. Blood sprayed across the floor, but I didn't stop. I used the momentum to slide right up the shaft of the spear until I was standing inches from her face. Jiang Qingzhu froze. She had never seen anyone fight with such suicidal brutality. She started, her voice trailing off in shock. A cold light flashed in my eyes. I didn't pull away. Instead, I tightened my fist and swung it with everything I had left, burying it deep into her face. Bang! Jiang Qingzhu let out a sharp, pathetic scream. The spear slipped from her hand as she was launched backward, crashing hard against the floor. I stood there, my expression as calm as still water. Honestly, I couldn't believe she was daydreaming in the middle of a life-and-death struggle. She'd spent the whole fight acting like the main character of a novel, dropping arrogant lines left and right. If I didn't know better, I'd think she was the one with the system, not me. Jiang Qingzhu groaned, stars dancing in her vision. She struggled to lift her head, her eyes widening in pure terror. She watched as I stood there, my white clothes stained crimson, calmly reaching back to grab the spear embedded in my shoulder. I pulled it out in one smooth motion. My brow furrowed slightly from the sting, but that was it. Then, the impossible happened. Fresh blood sprayed from the wound, but within seconds, tiny threads of nerves and blood vessels began to knit together. In the blink of an eye, the hole in my shoulder closed up as if it had never been there. What kind of ability is this?" she stammered, her voice trembling with disbelief. I looked down at her. Her spear technique was trash. Her reaction time was like an old woman's. She was just a sheltered, naive rich girl who thought the world revolved around her. She'd spent the whole fight telling me I'd already lost, completely lost in her own ego. The golden glow in my eyes faded back to a deep, dark ink. I walked over to her, looming over her broken form. I raised my hand and, without a hint of hesitation, delivered a brutal, stinging slap across her cold, pretty face. Slap? Her head snapped to the side. Before she could even process the shock, the force of the blow sent her eyes rolling into the back of her head. Her skull bounced off the floor. She looked miserable, a far cry from the ice queen she pretended to be. In the final second before she blacked out, I leaned down and whispered one question. Jiang Qingzhu, what kind of genius are you supposed to be exactly? System notification. You have defeated and humiliated Jiang Qingzhu. Villain points earned, 8,000. Meanwhile, on the first floor of the training building, the atmosphere was a lot more tense. My classmate, Yu Qianqian, was pacing back and forth in the instructor's office. She was terrified. She knew I wasn't the type to back down, and she feared my temper would get me killed if I actually tried to fight Jiang Qingzhu. Sitting behind the desk was Wang Yongfeng, the school team's head coach. He was a powerhouse, just one step away from becoming a rank 3 martial artist. I understand, Wang Yongfeng said, nodding after Yu Qianqian finished her report. He looked worried. Jiang Qingzhu was the school's ace. The faculty and her family had poured a fortune into her. On the other hand, I was a rising star he'd just noticed. He didn't want either of us hurt, but he assumed that if we fought, I'd be the one ending up in a casket. How long has he been up there? Wang Yongfeng asked, standing up. About 10 minutes, Yu Qianqian replied, glancing at the clock. Let's go. Take me to them before he gets himself killed. Just as they turned to leave, Yu Qianqian's phone vibrated. She looked at the screen and gasped. Teacher, it's Yili. He's calling me. Wang Yongfeng breathed a visible sigh of relief. Good. Answer it. Yu Qianqian hit speaker. Yili? Are you okay? Are you free right now? My voice came through the line, sounding perfectly calm. Yes. What happened with the senior? Are you all right? There was a brief pause on my end. I was calling to tell you about that. To put it simply, we've reached a preliminary settlement. Yu Qianqian exhaled, her shoulders dropping. Oh, thank God. Then I dropped the bomb. But she's unconscious right now. I need someone to help me handle this. Unconscious? Yu Qianqian shrieked. Wang Yongfeng jumped nearly a foot in the air. What happened? He hissed. Yeah, she's out cold. I confirmed over the phone. Yu Qianqian tried to stay calm, covering the mic with her hand. How? How did she go unconscious? I hit her, I said. My tone was so matter-of-fact that it sounded like I was wondering why she'd ask such a stupid question. Yu Qianqian started shaking. Wang Yongfeng couldn't take it anymore and shouted. Is someone else with you? Yili, what did you do? Oh, the coach is there. I sounded mildly surprised. I'm coming down now. I'll bring her to the office. The line went dead. Yu Qianqian slumped into a chair, her head spinning. The world felt like it had gone upside down. In her mind, Jiang Qingzhu was an untouchable goddess of battle. The gap between us should have been massive. Did they really fight? Wang Yongfeng paced the room, clutching his hair. Why is this kid always fighting? First Shen Lian, then Lu Yongda, and now the Jiang girl? She doesn't know how to hold back. He's going to be broken. He was genuinely mourning my career. With the provincial exams coming up, he was worried the school team was turning into a support group for the disabled. Where is he? I have some high-grade spiritual medicine in the cabinet. We need to save him. Creak. The office door swung open. I walked in, my white shirt torn and stained with blood, but my expression was as steady as a mountain. I was carrying someone in my arms. Wang Yongfeng stood up, his eyes darting to my shoulder, then down to the person I was holding. His pupils shrank to pinpricks. There she was, the cold, arrogant genius of Linghai High, Jiang Qingzhu. Her face was swollen and bruised, her eyes tightly shut in a mask of pain. Wang Yongfeng's jaw hit the floor. He looked at Yu Qianqian, then back at me, his brain completely short-circuiting. What is this? Like I told you. Yu Qianqian whispered, her voice trembling. He knocked her out. The coach went stiff. He looked at me as if I were a monster from another dimension. Hello, Teacher Wang, I said with a polite nod. I looked over at Yu Qianqian, my arms getting a bit tired. Where should I put her? Follow me, Yu Qianqian said, her legs moving like they were made of lead. She walked out of the office in a daze. I followed right behind her, leaving Wang Yongfeng standing there alone. The only sound in the room was the rhythmic ticking of the wall clock. To the coach, it probably sounded like thunder. His heart hammered against his ribs. That was Jiang Qingzhu. She was the most talented martial arts student Ling Hai had seen in 20 years. She was cold, serious, and untouchable. Most students couldn't even get a word out of her, let alone touch her. She was the kind of girl who would train until her muscles failed and then grit her teeth to walk home alone. Now, she was unconscious, her face bruised and swollen, cradled in my arms. She had been struck in a weak point during combat. In a real fight, that meant she had lost. It meant the substitute I had brought in had defeated the school's absolute ace. Wang Yongfeng struggled to breathe. His heart raced. For 3 years, I had been a nobody. Then, in one sudden burst of brilliance, I had basically dismantled the entire school team. My composure was terrifying. My talent was absurd. A genius, Wang Yongfeng muttered, sinking into his sofa and rubbing his forehead. Suddenly, he burst into a wild laugh. Yili, you kid, you're a damn monster. With a freak like me on the team, the other schools didn't stand a chance. The exchange matches were a lock. The provincial exams were as good as won. A short while later, I was at the Linghai First People's Hospital. The ward was clean and smelled strongly of disinfectant. In this world, powerful martial artists have bodies far tougher than ordinary people. If they get hurt, a normal surgeon can't even cut through their skin with a scalpel, let alone perform surgery. Because of that, the top medical teams at city hospitals are mostly made up of martial artists with healing talents. A female doctor in a white lab coat stood by the bed, using her healing energy to treat the injuries on Jiang Qingzhu's face. I sat in a chair nearby, ignoring the unconscious girl. I pulled up my system panel. Current villain points, 12,700. Between dealing with Yu Liang and fighting Jiang Qingzhu, I had gained 8,200 points. For the first time since crossing over, I had a 5-figure balance. Once I got my hands on a proper breathing technique, I could finally go on a spending spree to boost my stats. The fight with Jiang Qingzhu had been eye-opening. She was the first opponent who actually put pressure on me. My perfected boxing techniques and superior strength couldn't easily break through her spear defense. Even when she had used up 70% of her chi, she didn't look exhausted. That was the power of her breathing technique. It allowed her to recover energy constantly. She clearly hadn't mastered it yet. An S-grade technique should do much more than just recover chi quickly. But even so, her stamina far outclassed mine. It proved how vital a good breathing technique was. If I hadn't used the heavenly stride and my SSS-grade talent to disrupt her flow and catch her in a moment of distraction, the fight would have been much harder. I still would have won, though. My undying soul talent was basically a cheat code. As long as the grade gap wasn't too large, I could just trade injuries until the other person dropped. The problem was that Jiang Qingzhu was only at the top of the first tier in this province. There were others like her, maybe 10 or so, who were even stronger. If they teamed up against me during the exams, I'd be in trouble. Given how my system worked, I had to assume everyone would eventually want to jump me. I needed a breathing technique and better offensive skills. My current boxing was fine for finishing people off, but it lacked the raw power I needed for high-level aggression. I let out a quiet breath, planning my next move. Yili, Yu Qianqian said suddenly, her voice full of wonder. I really didn't think you could actually beat Senior Jiang. I shrugged. She's all right. A bit of a pushover, honestly. Even though she had pressured me, I lived by a simple rule. Despise the enemy strategically, but respect them tactically. As long as I could farm villain points, I'd mock a god to their face. Yu Qianqian laughed, her eyes fixed on me like I was some kind of rare treasure. Only you would dare say that. No other student in Linghai would call her a pushover. The doctor finished her work and sighed with relief. She's fine. Just a slight concussion, she told me. The swelling is down. She can leave as soon as she wakes up. I nodded politely. Yu Qianqian thanked the doctor, and as the woman left, I stood up to go. Aren't you going to wait for her to wake up? Yu Qianqian asked. What does her waking up have to do with me? I waved her off. She's weak and likes to show off. I did her a favor by humbling her. Asterisk ding. Verbal taunt successful. Villain points from Jiang Qingzhu, plus 100, asterisk. My eyes lit up. I stopped in my tracks. What is it? Yu Qianqian asked. I cleared my throat and looked at the girl on the bed. I knew she could hear me. I let out a mocking laugh. As the captain, you acted like a hands-off boss while letting trash build their little cliques. You let the team atmosphere turn into a toxic mess. And then you have the nerve to act all high and mighty? You expected the new guy to just sit there and take it? Let me be blunt. An arrogant, self-righteous princess like you just needs a good beating to learn some sense. I hope next time we meet, you drop the attitude. You're a joke. I turned and walked out, leaving Yu Qianqian staring at me in shock. On the bed, Jiang Qingzhu's fingers twitched, her fists clenching tight. She bit her lip, a fire of rage burning in her chest. But deep down, she couldn't find a single word to argue back. My words had cut through her pride like a blade. I had made it clear. If she wasn't going to lead properly, she should stay out of my way. I stood up to leave, my parting words hanging in the air like a heavy fog. I didn't care if I was being harsh. Before I arrived, Jiang Qingzhu didn't bother to lead. Now that I was here, she wanted to act like a boss. If she wanted to stand in my way, I'd just have to crush her along with the rest of them. Asterisk ding. Villain points from Jiang Qingzhu plus 500, asterisk. I smirked. That was a nice bonus. A few moments after I walked out, Jiang Qingzhu sat up in her hospital bed. She took a deep breath, her eyes clearing as a new light flickered in them. She had messed up, but she realized there was still a chance to make amends. Yu Qianqian looked at her in surprise. Senior, you're awake. Jiang Qingzhu nodded silently. She swung her legs out of bed, pulled on her socks, and stepped into her shoes. She was ready to move. You just woke up, Yu Qianqian said, stepping forward. Shouldn't you rest a bit longer? No need, Jiang Qingzhu replied. Where are you going? To apologize in person, Jiang Qingzhu said firmly. Before Yu Qianqian could process that, the captain had already vanished through the door. Yu Qianqian stood there, stunned. Apologize? To whom? The answer hit her a second later, but then Jiang Qingzhu reappeared at the door, looking slightly lost. Which floor is Yi Li's training room on? She asked coldly. Yu Qianqian's expression froze. By the time evening rolled around, I was back in my private training room on the third floor of the first high school building. I let out a sigh of relief as I closed the door. This place was starting to feel more like home than my actual house. I sat down and pulled up my system panel. Name, Yi Li, level, second order, level 1, 10%, martial arts, flowing water fist, perfect, cloud-piercing spear, perfect, heavenly star void step, perfect, talent, SSS grade eternal soul, level 1 upgradable, innate ability, spear martial saint body. On my way back, I had stopped by the library and dropped 200,000 Han Xia coins on a new manual. It was a second-order technique called Flood Dragon Mountain Shaker. It was known for being one of the most powerful fist techniques in its class. I flipped through the pages, and the system immediately updated. Second-order Flood Dragon Mountain Shaker. Not learned, points can be added. I didn't have a good breathing technique yet, so I wasn't in a rush to dump points into my cultivation level. I wanted to wait until I found a manual that might give me a speed buff. For now, I focused on my skills and that upgradable tag next to my SSS grade talent. Level 1 of Eternal Soul could already heal a puncture wound in my shoulder instantly, without draining much stamina. I was basically a tank. If I got it to level 10, would I be immortal? Could I regrow limbs from a single drop of blood? The thought made my blood race. But I didn't know how many points a triple S talent would eat. I didn't want to throw 10,000 points into a black hole and get nothing back. It was better to max out the Flood Dragon technique first. One step at a time. System, add points, I muttered. Ding. Consuming villain points to level up Flood Dragon Mountain Shaker. Because I had already mastered the complex Heavenly Star Void step, my understanding of lower-tier physical mechanics was off the charts. Gain buff, cultivation speed plus 20%. I smiled. None of those points I spent earlier were wasted. Consuming 200 points. You have found the trick to this technique. Compress the muscles during the punch and release them all at once upon impact. This creates a dizzying shockwave. Flood Dragon Mountain Shaker, entry level. The aggressive nature of the style reminded me of the Baji Quan from my old world. I began merging the two concepts in my mind, refining the movements. Gain buff, cultivation speed plus 30%. Point cost reduced by 10%. Consuming 800 points. You have mastered the shock technique. You can now control the timing and intensity of the muscle compression. Flood Dragon Mountain Shaker, mastery. consuming 1,000 points. The technique is now second nature. Even the creator of this skill wouldn't understand it better than you. Flood Dragon Mountain Shaker. Perfect. It had taken me less than 5 minutes to max out a technique I'd just bought. This was the power of the system. I stood up, stretching my fingers and feeling the way my muscles coiled and uncoiled. This technique gave me a much higher level of control over my own body. I walked over to the heavy testing machine. I stared at the massive sandbag, lowered my center of gravity, and relaxed my shoulders. I slowly clenched my fist. The muscles in my arm tightened, bulging into terrifying, snake-like lines. Power simmered beneath my skin. Then, I exploded. My fist tore through the air with the sound of a gunshot. The moment my knuckles hit the sandbag, my compressed muscles snapped open. Boom. The heavy sandbag flew upward, slamming into the backplate with a violent crash. The entire machine shuddered under the impact. I looked up at the screen. Punch strength, 2100 kg. A typical second-order fighter would be lucky to hit 1,200 kilograms. I had nearly doubled the limit. If I had a high-level breathing technique to back this up, I'd easily clear 3,000 kilograms. But the real kicker wasn't just the raw power. It was the vibration. Anyone trying to block this would feel their blood boil and their vision go dark after a few hits. It was basically armor-piercing damage. I pulled my hand back and rotated my wrist. I was much stronger now, but this technique was a stamina hog. With my current stats, I could probably only throw 10 of those full power punches before gassing out. I checked my remaining balance, 2,200 villain points. Flood Dragon only cost 1,000 points to max out, which was a steal compared to the 3,000 I spent on the Heavenly Star Void Step. It made sense, though. The Star Step was a top-tier, legendary technique, even if it was incomplete. Compared to that, everything else felt like child's play. The Flood Dragon technique was roughly B rank. In this world, you got what you paid for. Even though the price difference between techniques was massive, the cheaper ones were often more practical for everyday combat. I didn't mind spending a few villain points to sharpen my edge, but I knew where the real value lay. Martial arts techniques were temporary, but talent was forever. I shook my head and pulled up my system panel. My current talent was SSS grade, Undying Soul, level 1. It was ready for an upgrade. With a grade that high, the potential was limitless. I just had to be brave enough to bet big. I took a deep breath, rubbed my hands together, and prepared to dump my savings into this bottomless pit. I focused my mind. 10,000 villain points surged into the system panel like a tidal wave. A notification chimed in my head. The system detected that I had gone all in for a second time. It unlocked a special title for me, Golden Spirit. This title boosted my mental strength and made me immune to any soul or mental attacks below the third order. I grinned. I knew that during the provincial exams, many students with mental-type talents liked to hide in the shadows. They waited for their opponents to let their guard down before striking with a psychic blast. If the top-tier seeds were the juggernauts of the exams, these campers were the poisonous wasps. They were annoying, hidden, and deadly. But with this title, I didn't have to worry about them anymore. 10,000 points was a heavy price, but the payoff was worth it. I watched the text scrolling across my vision. Developing a martial talent was a nightmare for most fighters. Unlike techniques, which had manuals and teachers, talents were unique. Even if you found someone with a similar gift, their advice might not work for you. Most A-rank or S-rank geniuses spent their entire lives trying to fully unlock their potential. I didn't have that kind of time. I poured the villain points in without hesitation. It was a massive gamble. The system started the upgrade. After the first 1,000 points, my soul felt more condensed, clear like the first light of dawn. I felt my physical limits expanding. A cool sensation washed over my forehead, followed by a numbing, pleasant ache in my bones. My soul was hardening. After 5,000 points, my soul reached the maximum density my current body could handle. The system automatically shifted gears, using the excess energy to nourish my blood and chi. By the time 8,000 points were gone, the energy had cycled through my entire system. My physical strength hit a new peak. A new notification flashed. Undying Soul upgraded to level 2. I had unlocked a new active ability, Soul Awakening. When activated, my soul would enter a hyperactive state, violently boosting my blood energy and physical power. It had cost 8,000 points just to level up this SSS grade talent once, but the surge in my mental power was undeniable. Unlike my passive spear dance body, this was a manual trigger. I wanted to see what it could actually do. I walked back to the strength testing machine. The heavy sandbag still bore the dent from my last punch. I closed my eyes and triggered Soul Awakening. In an instant, my blood began to boil. My muscles surged and bulged beneath my skin. My aura turned violent, radiating outward like a physical weight. I exhaled slowly and opened my eyes. My vision had changed. My pupils had turned into piercing, golden slits, golden pupils that looked like they could see through any illusion. A faint golden glow radiated from my skin. I felt like I was transforming into something beyond human, something ancient and fierce. My presence was that of a prehistoric beast waking up from a long slumber. Thanks to my increased mental strength, I could actually control this sudden explosion of power. I looked at the sandbag and threw a simple punch. There was no fancy footwork, just raw force. The air in front of my fist compressed so tightly it let out a high-pitched scream. Crack! My fist tore a hole straight through the heavy sandbag. The bag didn't just fly back, it exploded. The filler sprayed everywhere as the remains slammed into the backplate, shattering it instantly. The entire training room shook from the force of the impact. The large screen flickered. In the final second before it short-circuited and went black, it displayed the number, 6,500 kilograms. I stared at the dead screen in shock. That was more than 3 times my previous record. I was hitting numbers that usually belonged to third-order fighters. My hand was still buzzing. This Super Saiyan state was no joke. Every cell in my body felt alive, pulsing with an all-powerful confidence. If I ran into Chun-Lian now, I wouldn't just beat her. I'd slap her so hard, she'd be embedded in the wall. Soul Awakening was the ultimate trump card. It wouldn't last long, but while it was active, my reaction time, hearing, and dynamic vision were all off the charts. Suddenly, my ears twitched. I heard footsteps. They were light, rhythmic, and getting closer. Someone was coming to my private room. It was late, so I figured it had to be Fong Ming or maybe Yu Qianqian. A knock echoed against the door. I took a breath and deactivated Soul Awakening, letting the golden glow fade from my eyes. My appearance quickly returned to normal. The golden light faded, leaving only a lingering, domineering aura between my brows, a silent reminder of the power I had just tapped into. Knock, knock, knock. The sound at the door continued. Coming, I called out. I stood up and walked to the entrance. When I pulled the door open, a young girl stood there. She had long black hair draped over her shoulders and delicate, refined features. Her expression was cold and distant, but her small lips were pressed together as if she were bracing herself. Her eyes, clear as spring water, looked up at me with a sudden flash of resolve. It was Jiang Qingzhu. I frowned. I didn't expect her to show up here at this hour. Was she unhappy with the results of our fight earlier? Did she want a rematch? The thought made me smirk. A golden glint flickered briefly in my dark eyes. I was starting to understand these talented martial artists. They were stubborn. They hated losing. To deal with people like her, I usually didn't hold back. I preferred to crush their pride in one go, which was the most efficient way to farm villain points from the system. So far, it had worked perfectly. Wang Ren, Chun-Lian, and Liu Yongda had all been beaten so badly they didn't even have the courage to look me in the eye anymore. Even if they hated me, they kept it hidden. But Jiang Qingzhu was different. She was a genuine genius, not a piece of trash like the others. I wondered what she wanted. You need something? I asked calmly. Inside, I began circulating my qi. Even though my energy was mostly drained from using Soul Awakening, I was confident I could take her down in 3 moves if things turned ugly. Jiang Qingzhu took a deep breath, looking like she was gathering every ounce of courage in her body. I came to apologize, she said seriously. I raised an eyebrow. I hadn't expected that. Apologize? Yes, she nodded, her voice soft but sincere. I heard what you said at the hospital. I realize now that I treated our match like a chore. I just wanted to get it over with, so I wouldn't waste time on my own cultivation. I was wrong to look down on you. I hope you can accept my apology. She sounded incredibly earnest. There wasn't a hint of acting in her voice. In fact, if this was an act, she deserved an Oscar. "Oh," I said, feeling a twinge of disappointment. I was actually hoping she'd pick a fight so I could get some points. I decided to push her a little. "If you're truly sincere about an apology, shouldn't you be on your knees? Don't you know the basics of showing regret?" "On my knees." Her cold face filled with confusion. "What is that?" I sighed. She was either incredibly dense or too innocent for her own good. Since her attitude was genuine, I didn't feel like pushing it. Forcing someone who was already sorry didn't give me much satisfaction. It was much more fun to break people like Shen Lian. "Fine," I said, waving my hand dismissively. "I accept your apology. Now go home." "Wait," she cried out as I started to close the door. She instinctively reached out to block the door from shutting. But the moment her hand touched the wood, she felt a force she couldn't possibly resist. My strength slammed the door shut anyway. Bam! A notification popped up in my head. Gave the innocent eldest daughter of the Jiang family the cold shoulder. Villain points plus 200. Outside, Jiang Qingzhu stared at the closed door in shock. She looked at her slender palm, bewildered. Based on our fight this afternoon, our strength should have been equal. How was his physical power suddenly so overwhelming? The door creaked open again. I looked out. What else? She didn't have time to process the strength difference. She blurted out, "I have a favor to ask." "Speak." "This afternoon, did you say my spear technique was like a pile of trash?" she asked. I grinned. Now we were getting somewhere. I thought she was finally going to get angry. "Yeah, I said it." "So what?" She nodded, then started listing my insults like they were items on a grocery list. "You also said my reaction time was like an old person's, and that I was too full of myself." "Correct," I replied. "And?" She looked up at me, her face dead serious. "Then please, teach me." I froze. "Teach you? If it makes my spear technique better, I'll do anything," she said firmly. I frowned, the shock wearing off. "I refuse." I wasn't joking. I was currently struggling to find a decent breathing technique for myself, and I was running out of money fast. I needed resources and high-quality martial arts manuals, and I couldn't afford them. I was even considering heading out of the city to hunt monsters in the wilderness just to make ends meet. Why would I waste time teaching a rich girl how to swing a spear? "I don't know how to teach people," I added, starting to close the door again. "Find someone else." "I can give you everything I know," she shouted desperately. "Anything. We can exchange." The door stopped. I looked at her, my eyes narrowing. "Anything." If I remembered correctly, an S-class breathing technique cost at least 5 million credits, and even then, you couldn't just buy them. You had to be a top-tier disciple or a direct bloodline member of a great family to even see one. Nobody just handed those out to strangers. I figured she was probably messing with me. "Yes." She saw a glimmer of hope. "I can give you my family's frost snow technique. It's an S-class breathing method passed down through generations. It will definitely help you. I also know 3 or 4 rank 2 martial arts, and I've started learning a rank 3 1. Give me a little time, and I can teach those to you too." I went silent. She was either the most desperate person I'd ever met or the most naive. Jiang Qingzhu watched me, her heart racing. She wasn't just being impulsive. She had been practicing these techniques for a long time, and while her raw power was high, her mastery of the actual forms was a mess. Her rank 2 techniques were stuck at the proficient level, and she couldn't break through to mastery. The elders in her family who could teach her were all away at the front lines, fighting monsters in the trenches. With the provincial exams looming, she was panicking. She had been training day and night, ignoring everything else, but she wasn't getting anywhere. She knew that if she faced someone with the same power level who actually knew how to fight, she'd lose instantly. In her eyes, I was the only person who had ever seen through her flaws so clearly. I was also the guy who had mastered a broken, incomplete movement technique to a level that shouldn't be possible. To her, I wasn't just a jerk, I was her only hope. I looked at the girl standing before me. Jiang Qingzhu was biting her lower lip, her face pale as she forced herself to meet my eyes. She looked like she was standing on the edge of a cliff. Is it okay?" she whispered. She was actually worried I'd say no. I took a deep breath, looking at the desperation in her eyes. I had a system that thrived on me being a villain, and here was the school's goddess offering me everything on a silver platter. Anything works, I said, my voice steady. If you give me what I want, I'll turn you into the strongest spear user in this entire school. I pulled out my phone and did a quick search for S-class breathing techniques. My eye twitched when the results popped up. The Red Steel Rock method had recently sold for 8 million credits. Another one, Everlasting Life, went for 8.5 million. I had vastly underestimated the market. I thought these things were worth maybe 5 million at most. Poverty had really limited my imagination. But then again, a good breathing method could sustain a whole clan for generations. It was worth every cent. I felt a surge of relief that I'd agreed to her deal. If I had let this opportunity slip away to someone else, it would have hurt worse than being killed. I closed my phone and looked up at Jiang Qingzhu. She was busy closing the door to the training room, making sure we were alone. What do you want to learn first? I asked. She turned around, her voice small. My spear technique is bad. Actually, it's beyond bad. She wasn't lying. During our fight earlier that afternoon, I had seen through every single one of her moves. Every time she tried to trigger a martial art, I cut her off before she could even start. Part of that was because I had maxed out the cloud-piercing spear technique, which was a decent rank 2 skill. But the real reason was my eternal soul talent. It gave me a 500% boost to learning spear and staff techniques. In this province, at my current level, I was likely the best spearman alive. I had the soul of legends within me, beings like the great sage or the god of war. Compared to them, these school-level techniques were child's play. Show me the technique you use most, I said, reaching out my hand. Let me see what I'm working with. Since we had a deal, I didn't feel the need to be a jerk anymore. She nodded quickly, looking surprisingly obedient. This is the Roaming Dragon Wind scripture, she said, pulling a manual from her storage ring. It's my main technique, but I'm still a beginner. I couldn't even trigger it during our fight today. She handed it over. Should I go home and come back tomorrow? You might need time to study it. The provincial exams are still a month away, so I'm not in a huge rush. The exams are a month away, but the exchange competition is in a few days, I replied, flipping through the pages. Just stay here for a bit. I'll take a quick look. I smiled as a notification appeared on my system panel. Rank 3 Martial Art, Roaming Dragon Wine Scripture, Genuine Version. She really was the daughter of a great family. Her basic technique was actually rank 3. It's really hard to learn, Jiang Qingzhu said softly, trying to be helpful. It took me months just to get the basics down. Even with your talent, it might take a while to make sense of it. Most of our opponents in the exchange aren't that strong anyway, except for Tang Yao from the Sword Pavilion. I can handle the rest even without an upgrade. My father always says martial arts shouldn't be rushed. I frowned and looked up from the book. You have 2 choices. Either go outside and wait, or shut up and stay here. Which one? The second one, she muttered, dropping her head and going silent. The room went quiet. I focused on the manual while Jiang Qingzhu started looking around my private training room. Most of these rooms were identical, but students usually added their own expensive equipment. In her room, she had a massive spirit gathering array that cost a fortune to speed up cultivation and prevent internal injuries. My room was bare. The only thing that looked well used was the strength testing machine. Jiang Qingzhu's eyes wandered to that machine, and suddenly, her pupils shrank. She wasn't looking at the hole I had punched through the casing. She was looking at the screen, the blood-red numbers that had flickered back to life after the machine's internal error. Full power, 6,800 kilograms. She froze. 6,800 kilograms. That was impossible. She knew her own limit was barely 2,000 kilograms, and that was enough to make her the top student in school. Well, second now. A typical fighter who had just reached rank 3 usually topped out at 6,000 kilograms. That was a wall many people spent their entire lives trying to climb. And here I was, a rank 2 student who hadn't even started using a high-level breathing method, and I had already smashed through that ceiling. She realized something then. If 6,800 kilograms was my true power, I could have killed her with one punch during our duel. I hadn't been trying to humiliate her. I had been holding back. She realized the truth then. My attacks during our duel weren't just holding back. I hadn't been testing her. I had been sparing her life. To call it going easy was an understatement. I had practically handed her the win on a silver platter. Jiang Qingzhu stood there, her face flushing with a mix of shock and pure shame. She remembered how confidently she had told me I couldn't win. She remembered her arrogant words about the fight being over. It was embarrassing. A true genius was someone like me. Someone who hid their strength so deeply that the enemy thought they actually stood a chance. If I had brought my spear today, I would have sent you flying with one strike. She bit her lip as my earlier words echoed in her mind. Back then, she thought it was just the talk of a sore loser. Now, she knew I was simply stating a fact. If I could beat her silver spear with my bare hands, then my performance in the upcoming provincial exams was already a guaranteed success. Combined with my rank A, or maybe even higher, healing talent, I was already in the top tier of martial arts students in the entire province. I wasn't just a participant anymore. I was a serious contender for the championship. While she was busy staring at the numbers on the machine, my vision was filled with system notifications. Spending 1,000 villain points to upgrade rank 3 martial skill, Wandering Dragon Wind Strike. Your Spear Saint physique is active. The complex manuals that used to look like ancient gibberish suddenly became clear. It was like a genius looking at a primary school math problem. Buff gained. Cultivation speed increased by 500%. The answers were being handed to me. All I had to do was copy them down. As my villain points drained, my understanding of this precious technique deepened. I began to grasp the Wandering Dragon intent. To move like a dragon meant the spear wasn't just a stick, it was a living, breathing force of destruction. The tip and the shaft became capable of tearing through the defenses of any martial artist at my level. Ding. Training complete. Current mastery. Great success. Evaluation. This session is equivalent to 20 years of bitter cultivation. 20 years. I wondered if anyone could actually block a strike backed by 2 decades of focus. I checked my balance. 3,400 villain points left. 20 years, and it's only a great success? I muttered, my lip twitching. Martial skills were ranked by levels. Entry, proficient, expert, great success, and perfection. I didn't dump the rest of my points in just yet. Usually, a rank 2 skill cost me 3,000 points to max out. This rank 3 skill had reached great success for only 1,000. My Spear Saint physique was doing heavy lifting, but I like to think my own hard work played a part too. I'm finished reading, I said, looking over at the dazed Jiang Qingzhu. I handed the manual back to her. I'm ready to teach you. Are you ready? So fast, she asked, snapping out of her trance. She looked skeptical. Let me see. Show me your current level of understanding. No need for all that, I said, standing up. I walked to the weapon rack in the corner and pulled down a heavy, pitch-black spear. I turned to her with a calm expression. Just use the Wandering Dragon Wind Strike and attack me. Combat is the fastest way to improve. She hesitated, wondering if I really knew how to spot the flaws in her technique. But seeing my nod of confirmation, she tapped her ring. In a flash of light, her snow-white spear appeared. Her aura shifted instantly, becoming sharp and cold. I thought that spear looked interesting the first time. I noted, nodding at the weapon. Silver Dragon White Spear. A top-tier rank 2 treasure, she said, her voice turning icy and professional. It boosts my frost energy and my skill power. Here I come. I lowered my chin and leveled my black spear. My gaze stayed flat, watching her every move. Jiang Qingzhu took a deep breath, activating her breathing method. Her internal energy surged. In the next second, she vanished. When she reappeared, she was less than 3 feet away. Her 7-foot white spear lunged out like a dragon emerging from the sea. The tip glowed with a sharp white light, piercing the air with an unstoppable momentum. I looked down. Her mastery was at the proficient level. The white glow on the tip showed she could already break through basic armor. For someone our age, it was an incredible achievement. But to me, someone who had reached great success, her attack path was painfully obvious. Internal energy flooded my limbs, flowing through the specific meridians required for the skill. Hum. The black spear let out a resonant, metallic cry. Suddenly, a ghostly image of a coiling dragon flickered around the dark shaft. I shifted my body by a fraction of an inch, letting her spear tip whistle past my ribs. Then, I raised my right hand and swung the black spear in a casual, fluid arc toward her. The air screamed as it tore. Ghostly dragon scales shimmered along the path of my strike. This is... Jiang Qingzhu's eyes widened in pure terror. She recognized that phantom image. It was the dragon manifestation, a phenomenon that only appeared once a practitioner reached great success. It was impossible. I had only held the manual for 10 minutes. Her hands shook. She desperately channeled her protective energy, exhaling a breath of extreme cold. Layers of thick, jagged ice crystals instantly formed a wall between us. It looked like an unbreakable fortress. But against the oncoming shadow of the dragon, that ice might as well have been glass. The phantom dragon surged forward, and against its overwhelming might, Jiang Qingzhu's defensive ice wall was pathetic. It shattered like wet tissue paper. I heard the sharp, ear-piercing cracks of the ice layers exploding one after another. In an instant, my spear tore through her internal energy defense. The black shaft swung toward her body. At the last possible second, I pulled back my strength, forcing the spear to veer off course. Only the sharp gust of wind from the strike actually hit her. Boom. The impact was still enough to send her flying back 60 feet before she managed to stabilize herself. Her neat clothes were shredded in several places, revealing patches of snow-white skin. She stood there, gasping for air, looking completely disheveled. But her eyes, clear as a winter spring, grew brighter. By watching me perform this soaring dragon technique, she had finally seen what she was missing. She stood silently with her spear, lost in thought. I planted my spear in the ground and tilted my head, watching her. I didn't interrupt. I had shown her every essential detail of the skill. Whether she could grasp it now depended entirely on her own talent. After 10 seconds of silence, Jiang Qingzhu raised her silver spear again and took a stance. This time, a faint, flickering dragon scale appeared on her silver blade. She had done it. She looked up at me, her face full of surprise and joy. I finally reached the proficient level. You're amazing. She felt like she had just stumbled upon a treasure. Breaking through a bottleneck that had haunted her for months was something the elders in her family could never help her achieve. I smiled but said nothing. Inside, I was crying. Damn it. It took me 20 years of simulated training in my head to reach great success, and she breaks through after just 2 moves? How long have you been practicing this skill? I asked, trying to keep my voice casual while holding back a literal mouthful of blood. I started when I first entered the 2nd rank, she replied, dropping her head in shame. It's been almost half a year. She looked up with a forced, bitter smile on her cold face. Before I met you, I actually thought I was a genius. Now I see I'm just a mediocre person built on expensive resources. I took a deep breath. You are a genius. Don't doubt that. If I had your resources, I would have hit the 3rd rank ages ago. How could I be a genius compared to you? Her voice trailed off, a look of profound loneliness washing over her. I sighed, giving up on explaining. Back in my hometown, we have a saying, a great teacher produces a brilliant student. Since you say I'm a genius, I'll be your teacher. If you don't show results, don't blame me for being harsh. I remembered the system's promise. If I could make her break down from my insults, I'd get 500 villain points. Jiang Qingzhu's eyes lit up with a look of pure admiration. At first, she thought I was just a violent thug. Then, she thought I was a sharp-tongued genius. Now, she saw me as some legendary figure, peerless in talent, yet willing to help others. Yili, she said, her beautiful face dead serious. Please, lash me as hard as you can from now on. I stared at her. I can't believe you just said something that embarrassing. Is it embarrassing? She asked, her face flushing slightly as she realized how much skin was showing through her torn clothes. Extremely. Don't ever say it again. I let out a long breath, put the spear back, and turned to leave. That's enough for today. Over the next 2 days, Jiang Qingzhu practically lived in my training room. I kept my word. Whenever she was slow to understand or her movements lagged, I let the flowers of language bloom. You're a failure. Even a primary schooler could follow that demonstration. Jiang Qingzhu, my dead grandmother could swing a spear better than you. What are you hesitating for? Damn it, "You talentless hack. How can you be this bad with me teaching you?" I made her shed quite a few little pearls of tears, and in exchange, the system showered me with villain points. After maxing out my spear technique, I still had a surplus. My current balance hit 7,200 points. All I needed now was for her to provide a high-level breathing technique, and my combat power would skyrocket. Under my guidance, her progress was explosive. She went from a fresh proficient level to the middle stages. By her estimate, reaching great success would only take another month. It was progress she never thought possible. With me acting as her compass in the desert of martial arts, she didn't have to worry about the path. She just had to run. The only downside was that every time she entered my room, she looked perfect, and every time she left, her clothes were a mess. Rumors started flying through the school. Students whispered about what we were doing in there. Jiang Qingzhu didn't care. To her, everyone in the school except me was irrelevant. My insults sounded better to her than their flattery. 2 days later, the training building meeting room was packed. The exchange competition was less than 48 hours away. Our coach, Wang Yongfeng, called the team together to discuss strategy. I sat near the head of the table, eyes half closed. Not far away, Lu Yangda, Shun Lian, and the others looked like they had been forced to swallow iron. Their faces were grim. They kept stealing glances at me, hidden, cautious, and filled with a deep, lingering fear. In the past week, they had learned exactly what I was capable of. Aside from Jiang Qingzhu, no one on the team could touch me. Shin Lian sat there, teeth clenched and fists tight. She glared at Jiang Qingzhu, who was sitting right next to me, her heart burning with resentment. She had heard the rumors. She knew Jiang Qingzhu had been seeking me out, and the thought of it made her blood boil. I had expected Shun Lian to be smarter. I thought she would use Jiang Qingzhu as a weapon against me, hoping the ice goddess would crush me for the rumors she'd been spreading. But days passed, and I was still standing tall. Jiang Qingzhu hadn't lifted a finger against me. In fact, she hadn't listened to a single word of the gossip. Shun Lian was losing it. I could see the frustration boiling behind her eyes, but she didn't have the courage to confront me directly anymore. She just sat there, stewing in her own bitterness. Our coach, Wang Yongfeng, stood up at the head of the table. He cleared his throat to get our attention. The upcoming exchange match was against Qingshan High School No. 1. He glanced at me and Jiang Qingzhu before he started his briefing. "You all know their captain," Coach Wang said with a serious expression. "Tang Yao. She's the young sect leader of the Qingshan Sword Pavilion. She's a rank 2, level 6 martial artist. That's 2 levels higher than Jiang Qingzhu." The room went quiet. A rank 2, level 6 student was rare, even among the top schools. Her talent is B-level, called True Self Sword Heart, the coach continued. She's arrogant, confident, and the backbone of their team. She's the only real threat we face. According to their roster, she's their trump card, save for the final slot. Coach Wang's voice turned stern, warning us not to take her lightly. But as I listened, my eyes lit up. A proud, arrogant sword-wielding genius? Now that sounded like fun. I couldn't wait to break that confidence. While the rest of the team looked like they were attending a funeral, I was actually looking forward to it. Coach Wang noticed the heavy atmosphere and nodded. He knew Tang Yao was basically at the level of a university team substitute. However, he wasn't too worried. In his mind, as long as Jiang Qingzhu and I teamed up, we could definitely take her down. The rest of their team wasn't as scary. They had 4 people at rank 1, level 7, and a couple at level 8. Compared to us, especially with me on the roster, we had the advantage. The rewards for this win are significant, Coach Wang said, leaning over the table. Official members will receive 1 million Hanxiao coins and a blood chi pill. Substitutes will receive 200,000 coins. No pill. The chair next to me screeched against the floor. Shun Lian bolted upright, her face flushed with rage. "Only 200,000, she screamed, glaring at the coach. "Are you joking? You're treating me like a beggar." She was completely breaking down. It was easy to see why. I had just forcibly taken her spot as an official member. She had tried to act like she didn't care, telling herself she was graduating soon anyway. But now she realized that losing that spot cost her 800,000 coins and a rare blood chi pill, something a rank 1 martial artist desperately needed. The realization hit her like a physical blow. She had been in this school team for over 2 years, working hard, playing the game. In all that time, she hadn't earned even half of what this one prize was worth. And now, the man she had treated like a test dummy for years, was taking it all. I was the school's new star, and she was an afterthought. Student Xinlian, calm down, Coach Wang said, pushing his glasses up his nose. I wasn't finished. Fine. Speak, she snapped, sitting back down with a huff. Aside from those rewards, the coach continued, the MVP of the match will receive a special treasure provided by both cities. And just to be clear, that reward is also off-limits for substitutes. That was the final straw. Shun Lian's mental defenses shattered. She pushed her chair back so hard it hit the wall and pointed a shaking finger at me. Yili, she shrieked, if you have even a shred of conscience left, you'll give me that 800,000 and the pill. They belong to me. She sounded so entitled, it was almost impressive. Lu Yongda and his lackeys looked at her like she was a ghost. They knew what I was capable of. They couldn't believe she was still being this brave, or this stupid. Did she not realize I could end her career with one punch? I opened my eyes and looked at her. My expression was flat. It had only been a few days since I last put her in her place, and she had already forgotten the lesson. Maybe I had been too gentle. Maybe the fact that she could still stand and complain meant I hadn't hit her hard enough. Are you deaf? She yelled, her voice cracking. I'm talking to you. You ungrateful jerk. After everything I did for you. She was getting louder, feeding off her own delusion. I'm telling you, Yili, the school only likes you because of your strength. Without it, you're nothing but a bully. Everyone knows what kind of person you really are. Tears started welling up in her eyes. She looked like the victim of a great tragedy. Beside me, I felt the air turn cold. Jiang Qingzhu's eyes were glowing with a faint, icy blue light. She didn't care about her own reputation, but she clearly didn't like Shun Lian dragging mine through the mud. Shun Lian, watch your mouth, Coach Wang barked. He couldn't stand her trying to ruin my relationship with the school. The higher-ups were doing everything they could to make me feel welcome, and here she was, trying to burn the bridge. Why should I? Shun Lian sneered, her fear completely gone, replaced by pure spite. The whole school knows he's a thug. I've made sure everyone knows what he did to the team. You're just a rat, Yili. A rat that everyone wants to kill. I looked into her eyes, and for a second, my gaze sharpened. I looked at her the way a predator looks at a pest in its territory. There was no pity in my heart, only a very cold, very focused intent. I let out a soft laugh. The atmosphere in the room shifted instantly. A heavy, suffocating pressure slammed into Shun Lian's chest. The air grew thick. She realized too late that she had overstepped. A thin layer of cold sweat broke out across her back. Slowly, I stood up. Shun Lian's heart started pounding against her ribs like a trapped animal. She was trying to stay composed, but the pressure in the room was becoming unbearable. I could see the gears turning in her head. For 10 years, she had controlled me through threats and manipulation. It was a habit she couldn't break, even now when the power dynamic had completely shifted. She looked around, searching for leverage. She realized she had nothing physical to hold over me anymore. But then a flicker of desperate inspiration lit up her eyes. She probably remembered some trashy novel where a weak heroine framed a stronger rival with rumors until they were driven to ruin. She thought she could use the school's rules as a shield to keep me at bay. Yili, don't forget your reputation in this school, she shouted, her voice trembling as she backed away. If you dare touch me, you'll never be able to clear your name. You'll be a monster forever. I stopped walking. I let a look of pure confusion wash over my face. Seeing me hesitate, Shun Lian's confidence surged. Her heart rate sped up, but this time it was from excitement. She told herself not to panic. We were in a meeting room, surrounded by the school team and the coach. If I struck her here, I'd be confirming every nasty rumor ever told about me. No matter how much talent I had, the school wouldn't keep a violent thug on the team. She truly believed she held the moral high ground. She thought she had me trapped. If you apologize right now. She didn't finish the sentence. Her eyes widened until they nearly popped out of her head. In her vision, I simply vanished. Before she could even blink, I was standing right in front of her. I pressed my palm gently against her chest. For a split second, she felt the cold breath of death on her skin. Then, a dull, heavy explosion rocked the entire meeting room. The thick wooden doors behind her shattered into a million splinters. Shun Lian's body flew backward like a broken doll, trailing a spray of crimson blood through the air. Her chest collapsed inward, her ribs snapping like dry twigs as they failed to protect her organs. She slammed into the stone floor outside and rolled a dozen times before finally coming to a halt. The room went dead silent. Yu Qianqian's throat went dry, her eyes fixed on the wreckage. Lu Yongdo was shaking so hard his chair rattled, his head bowed low as he stared intensely at the table, too terrified to look up. Jiang Qingzhu just gave a small, knowing nod. She knew my style. Meet violence with violence. Repay kindness with kindness. She sat back down, perfectly calm. Coach Wang Yongfeng stood there with a stiff expression. He swallowed hard, looking at the dying girl outside with a complicated gaze. He didn't say a word to stop me. He had seen everything. If Shun Lian hadn't jumped out to cause trouble, I wouldn't have even looked her way. If a martial arts genius at my age didn't have a bit of a temper, they wouldn't go far. Martial arts isn't academic research. It requires a sharp edge. He could also tell I had held back at the last second. If I hadn't, that punch would have ended her life right there instead of just breaking most of her ribs. I walked out of the room, slowly rolling my wrists. I had a calm smile on my face as I approached her. Shun Lian looked up at me, her body convulsing with regret and pure, unadulterated terror. She couldn't understand it. Was I a madman? Did I really not care about my reputation at all? She lay there in the dirt, coughing up blood, her face twisted in agony. She realized she had lost everything. The money, the pills, her grades, all of it was gone. Even if she survived, the internal injuries would probably ruin her future cultivation. I leaned down and whispered in her ear, my voice mocking and flat. Hey, classmate, get up. No sleeping on school grounds. A notification flashed in my mind. Asterisk Shun Lian's malice points, plus 3,000. Total malice points, 10, 200, asterisk. Her eyes rolled back into her head. Between the physical agony and the sheer psychological shock, she passed out cold. I turned back to the room and looked at Wang Yongfeng. Teacher Wang, she publicly slandered me and insulted me to my face. I gave her a small lesson. I assume that doesn't break any school rules. I mean, did she really not know her own level? That 3,000 points felt like she was just handing me a gift. Wang Yongfeng took a deep breath, a helpless smile tugging at his lips. Dealing with people like that at your age, it's bound to make your blood boil. Losing one substitute won't hurt us in the exchange match. Let's end the meeting here. He pulled out his phone to call an ambulance, but before it connected, he looked at us seriously. Go back and prepare. We leave tomorrow. While we were packing, the atmosphere was very different at Qingshan High School. Inside their training building, a middle-aged man with a balding head was smiling at a group of serious-looking students. The info on our opponents has been sent to you, he said. They'll arrive tomorrow morning. This is our pre-battle meeting. Any thoughts? His eyes settled on a girl at the end of the long table. She wore a black and white tracksuit, and a straight sword lay flat on the table in front of her. She sat there with a sharp, piercing aura that made everything else in the room seem dull. This was the kind of presence only a true sword master could have. This was Tang Yao, the pride of Qingshan High and the young mistress of the sword pavilion. I don't have many thoughts, Tang Yao said, her beautiful face remaining cold. Aside from that Jiang Qingzhu, the rest of them are just a disorganized mob. Her confidence was absolute. It was the kind of certainty that made everyone else believe her instantly. The teacher nodded, clearly satisfied. She was the most talented student he had ever seen. What about the rest of you? The teacher asked, joking. You can't all think they're just a mob like your captain does. A thin, feminine-looking boy stood up and picked up a file. Most of the Linghai team is familiar, but there's one person on the official roster we don't know much about. I did some digging with friends at their school. This guy is a first-stage peak warrior named Yi Li. He was added just last week. My sources say that for the past 3 years, nobody had even heard of him. The teacher looked surprised. So he's been hiding his strength for 3 years? A late bloomer. The boy nodded. That's my guess. We don't know his fighting style or his specific talents. He just appeared out of nowhere. I think we should keep an eye on him. He looked toward another student. Chung, you're also at the first stage peak. Do you think you can handle him? It's hard to say, Chen Deng replied. He was the feminine-looking boy, and his voice was heavy as he looked at the other team members. The rumors coming out of Linghai High are strange. They say this Yili defeated their vice-captain, Liu Yangda, plus 2 other official team members, all by himself. The room went silent. Our teacher frowned, and the other students looked grim. To be on the Linghai High School team, you had to be at least a first-stage level 7 warrior. Taking down 3 of them in a row was a feat only our captain, Tang Yao, could pull off. Chen Deng narrowed his eyes. The rumors might be exaggerated, and I'm sure he didn't win easily, but he might actually be a threat to the captain. We have to be careful. Tang Yao, who had been resting with her eyes closed, let out a short, mocking laugh. She didn't buy it. To her, a first-stage warrior was nothing. If someone at that level could survive a single strike from her blade, it was only because she was showing mercy. In her eyes, the only person at Linghai High worth her time was Jiang Qingzhu. Be careful if you want, Tang Yao said, her eyes snapping open with a sharp, cold light. But don't involve me in your worrying. Chen Deng didn't look offended. Instead, he looked at her with a fanatical sort of admiration. Of course, Captain, with your strength, defeating him is a given. I was just speaking generally. The rest of the team nodded in agreement, all of them looking at her with the same worshipful eyes. Our teacher noticed the tension and decided to end the meeting before Tang Yao got annoyed. He told us to go rest and prepare for tomorrow's match. Once Tang Yao and the teacher left, the vibe in the room shifted. The team crowded around Chen Deng. Chun, everything is ready, one of them said. We've gathered everyone. Chen Deng nodded. His plan was simple but dirty. As soon as the Linghai team arrived, we would lure them into friendly sparring matches. We had over 100 first-stage warriors ready to go. We would rotate them in one by one, grinding the Linghai team down until they were physically exhausted before the actual match even started. If the captain finds out we're using cheap tricks to win. Chen Deng started, a self-deprecating smile on his face. Chan, another student interrupted urgently. The scouts from Fengyun University and the Jian group are coming tomorrow. We have to win. Our overall strength is lower than Linghai's. Even with Tang Yao, we might lose the team total. If we don't get that $1 million prize and the blood pills, how are we supposed to compete in the entrance exams? Chen Deng's smile faded, replaced by a cold, calculating look. He knew he wasn't a genius. He was at the peak of the first stage, which was good for a normal student, but he was nothing compared to the monsters at the second stage. To stay near someone as bright as Tang Yao, he had to be ruthless. Clear out the training hall ahead of time, Chen Deng ordered. Keep it quiet so the school doesn't notice. We need to drain at least half their stamina. And don't worry, the first wave of challengers will be regular students. Even if we get caught, it won't ruin our official standing. Meanwhile, I was sitting on a high-speed train as it roared into Qingshan Station. Looking out the window, I thought about how strange this world was. High-level warriors could run faster than this train. Even low-level ones with the right talents were recruited by the Railway Bureau to clear out mutated beasts from the tracks. New world, new jobs. We stepped off the train and were immediately met by 2 students in Qingshan High uniforms. They were polite, smiling, and led us straight to a high-end hotel in the city center. Qingshan High was clearly pulling out all the stops for our arrival. After we dropped our bags, the 2 students approached our teacher, Wang Yongfeng. If you aren't too busy, why not come visit our school now? It's close by, and you can get a feel for the arena. Wang Yongfeng thought for a second and agreed. He went around us up. The 2 Qingshan students exchanged a look I didn't like. They looked way too happy. I was in my room, checking my stats. Name, Yili. Level, second stage level 1, 15%. Villain points, 10,200. I'd been stuck at level 1 for days. I had over 10,000 points sitting there, burning a hole in my pocket, but I was holding out. I wanted to upgrade my breathing technique to S rank before I spent them. Jiang Qingzhu kept telling me it would take a little more time. Getting an S rank technique wasn't exactly easy. I sighed, closing the system panel. Having all those points and not being able to use them was a special kind of torture. I just had to wait a couple more days. One way or another, things were about to get interesting. If the exchange competition ended and I still hadn't secured a breathing technique, I'd be in trouble. I let out a long breath. Once the competition was over, the provincial exams would be right around the corner. For safety's sake, I needed to find a technique to use now. My stubborn habit of refusing to settle for anything less than the best was starting to hold me back. A soft knock came at the door. I stood up and opened it to find Jiang Qingzhu standing there. Her cold, delicate face met my eyes. "Teacher Wang wants us to gather," she said, her tone unusually light. "We're going to visit Qingshan High to get a feel for the environment." She blinked, then her hand brushed against her storage ring. A thick, heavy ancient manual appeared in her palm. "Also, this is the Jiang family's White Mist Frost Snow," she said, handing the book to me. A look of apology crossed her face. "It took me a lot of time to get it out. I'm sorry for the delay." "It's this thick?" I asked, surprised as I took the heavy volume. It was the thickest book I had ever held. "Yes," Jiang Qingzhu nodded, a hint of pride in her voice. "That's why it was so hard to steal it without anyone noticing. But I managed." I stared at her, my mouth hanging open for a second. "Won't you get punished for this?" Stealing an S-rank family heirloom to give to an outsider was the kind of move that would make any father faint from rage. I imagined her being locked in a dark room, or worse. She waved her hand dismissively. "Don't worry. They won't kill me." That didn't exactly make me feel better. I rubbed my temples and sighed. "Well, thanks anyway. If you ever run into trouble, I'll have your back." "What are you talking about?" "This is a fair trade," she replied. She felt I was being too polite. In her mind, I had already helped her so much, and besides, we were friends now. Why keep such a strict score? I gave a small laugh and nodded. "In that case, I'm going to stay behind and start reading. Tell the teacher I'm busy and won't be joining the tour of Qingshan High." "All right," she said, her expression turning serious. "But remember, White Mist Frost Snow is incredibly difficult. It's nothing like the martial arts skills you've seen before. I've practiced it for nearly a year, and I've only just reached the entry level. If you don't understand it at first, don't get frustrated. Come ask me. With your talent, maybe you can reach the entry level in 3 months." She waved goodbye and walked away. 3 months? By then, the opportunity would be long gone. I shut the door with a click, sat on the bed, and calmed my racing heart. I opened my system panel. I hadn't expected the solution to my problem to literally walk through the door. I had been planning to fight Tang Yao with my base stats, take the rewards, and then settle for a mediocre technique. Now, I didn't have to wait. I looked at my stats, 10,200 villain points. I opened the heavy manual and flipped through the pages. The system pinged. S-rank breathing technique. White Mist Frost Snow, unlearned. According to Jiang Qingzhu, this was a nightmare to master. I didn't have any prior experience with breathing techniques, so I didn't expect any newbie bonuses. But I wasn't worried. If 8,000 points could push a SSS rank soul technique to level 2, 10,000 points had to be enough to master an S-rank breathing style. It was time to see what a technique worth millions of credits felt like. System, add points. I focused my mind. The 10,000 points vanished, turning into a massive torrent of energy that surged into the technique. Ding! Consuming villain points to upgrade S-rank technique. White Mist Frost Snow. As I first flipped through the pages, I fell into a deep state of contemplation. I recognized every word, but when they were put together, they made absolutely no sense. I struggled to understand how these characters could even form a sentence. I forced myself to be still, trying to grasp the context. 1,000 villain points consumed. You have learned a new method to recover chi through breathing. Unlike the crude swallowing method I used before, I stopped just inhaling air and spiritual energy in a mess. I found the way to guide the energy, ensuring every breath was packed with power. 2,000 villain points consumed. You have mastered the breathing frequency required to lead spiritual energy. I began trying to infuse my chi with a bone-chilling cold. 3,000 villain points consumed. You have mastered the cold attribute. Now, every time my body touched an enemy, I could force a sliver of freezing energy into their system. White Mist Frost Snow, entry level attained. This was likely where Jiang Qingzhu was. By infusing limbs with cold chi, a fighter could make their opponent's movements stiff or even cause frostbite. Most people at this level were limited to using their bare hands. But since Jiang Qingzhu had a specialized spear, She could channel it through a weapon. Must be nice to be rich, I thought, and kept pushing. 5,000 villain points consumed. After years of simulated research, you no longer need a specific breathing frequency. Even your normal breaths recover chi rapidly. Technique level up. White Mist Frost Snow, proficient. 6,000 villain points consumed. Your understanding deepens. Your chi is now heavily saturated with cold. If I touched an enemy for even a few seconds, I could expend a burst of chi to instantly freeze them solid. Technique level up. White Mist Frost Snow, expert. 8,000 villain points consumed. Your mastery over cold has reached perfection. Your chi recovery speed is now dozens of times faster than before. Technique level up. White Mist Frost Snow, master. 9,000 villain points consumed. You can now control the cold within your body at will. You begin researching a way to release all that energy in a single burst. 10,000 villain points consumed. You have mastered the technique to explode cold energy in all directions, freezing everything in your vicinity. New skill learned. Frost and snow everywhere. By increasing the output of my chi, I could now freeze my entire surroundings in an instant. Technique level up. White Mist Frost Snow, perfect. This latest upgrade cost me 10,000 villain points. It was a massive investment, but the results were staggering. The system informed me that this jump was equivalent to 50 years of bitter cultivation. Even though I wasn't even 20 yet, my mastery of this breathing technique was so profound that if Jiang Qingzhu saw me now, she'd probably have to call me Grandpa. 50 years of hard work, condensed into a single moment. I had finally maxed out this S-rank breathing method. I could feel the true chi circulating through my body at incredible speeds. Every breath I took felt like I was growing stronger. This abundant energy filling my limbs could be converted into bone-chilling cold in an instant. Looking at the system panel, my heart started racing. I finally understood why S-rank techniques were so expensive. The recovery speed was the biggest game changer. At this level of mastery, my chi recovered dozens of times faster than a martial artist without a breathing method. What took them a full day of meditation to restore, I could finish in a single hour. I didn't even need to worry about my breathing rhythm, noisy environments, or the local concentration of spiritual energy. Aside from being expensive and difficult to learn, S-rank techniques had no flaws. Then there was the bonus. Reaching perfection unlocked a unique skill. My eyes lingered on the description of frost and snow everywhere, and a surge of excitement hit me. I wanted to see just how much power this burst actually had. I walked into the cultivation room provided by the hotel. It was a decent space, a few kilometers wide. I took a deep breath, and my eyes glowed with a bright, icy blue light. A fierce, frigid wind erupted from my body, swirling around me like a storm. Boom! The air let out a sound like a muffled explosion. A visible wave of white frost blasted outward in a shockwave, slamming into the walls. Instantly, thick layers of crystal-clear ice branched out across the room. I looked around at the scene, a bit surprised. That single move had used up about 20% of my chi. A thick white mist now filled the training room. If an ordinary first-rank martial artist breathed this stuff in, their lungs would probably feel like they were being stabbed by needles. White mist and frost. The name of the technique was certainly fitting. Everything between me and the walls, the cushions, the steps, the equipment, was buried under a heavy layer of jagged ice. I tried to pick at the ice and found it was nearly 4 centimeters thick. I was stunned. If a regular fighter didn't see this coming, frost and snow everywhere would end the fight instantly. Even if they didn't lose consciousness, they'd be paralyzed on the floor. Wasn't this a bit too much? If an S-rank technique was this broken, how were normal students supposed to compete? I walked out of the training room. Within just a dozen breaths, my consumed chi was already mostly restored. I checked my balance, 200 villain points. Seeing that near-zero number made me feel a twitch of anxiety. I sighed. If there weren't any unscrupulous dojos nearby to harass, I'd almost consider kicking some random doors down just to farm points. The exchange competition was still a few hours away. I really needed to make a big haul then. Having only a 3-digit balance made me feel insecure. My only problem was that I didn't have a good excuse to start trouble yet. I just hoped this Tang Yao person was as strong as Jiang Qingzhu. If not, it would be hard to squeeze a decent amount of points out of the fight. I was about to lie down for a nap when my phone vibrated on the nightstand. I picked it up, and the laziness vanished from my face. I sat bolt upright. 2 short messages were on the screen from Jiang Qingzhu. We're surrounded at the martial arts arena. A lot of people are here with bad intentions. They're forcing us to spar. It's getting tricky. Can you go find help? I didn't waste a second. Meanwhile, at the massive martial arts arena, over 100 figures were gathered around the dueling platform, surrounding a small group. Jiang Qingzhu, looking as cold and composed as ever, stood behind her teammates, her fingers tapping rapidly on her screen. Just call their teacher, I messaged back. These people aren't following the rules. Is a teacher there? No, she replied. It's all Qingshan High students. They keep pushing us to fight. Okay, I'm on my way, I sent. Seeing my reply, Jiang Qingzhu let out a small breath of relief and tucked her phone away. She knew I was reliable. She looked up at the crowd, her brow furrowing. This was supposed to be a simple tour. Their coach, Wang Yongfeng, had gone off to the administrative offices to chat with the Qingshan teachers about educational philosophy, thinking everything was fine. But the moment they stepped into the arena, the atmosphere shifted. Hundreds of martial arts students appeared out of nowhere, acting enthusiastic. Jiang Qingzhu had tried to be polite, but the conversation quickly turned. They claimed they had heard Linhai High was elite and insisted on a friendly spar. Jiang Qingzhu had refused, but one of her teammates, Yu Qianqian, a girl who was way too nice for her own good, couldn't handle the pressure. She had stepped onto the stage. Jiang Qingzhu had been uneasy, but since Qianqian was a rank 1, level 8 fighter, she figured a quick match wouldn't hurt. She was wrong. Qingshan sent up a guy with a feminine, icy aura. He was at the peak of rank 1, and he caught Qianqian off guard, knocking her unconscious immediately. That set the Linhai team off. Lu Yongda and his cronies were currently screaming at the crowd, demanding an explanation. The Qingshan students just laughed. You're just bad at fighting. You lost, and now you're throwing a tantrum? If you can't play the game, don't step on the stage. Lu Yongda looked like he was about to explode. You Qingshan bastards use nothing but dirty tricks. If our big brother was here, you wouldn't dare act like this. Yeah, another teammate yelled. The moment you showed your faces, he would have slapped the life out of you. Keep bragging, the Qingshan crowd mocked. If you're so tough, get up here and show us. The two sides were locked in a shouting match, one side fueled by rage, the other by a calculated plan. On the stage, the feminine-looking guy stood calmly, looking like a hero. Jiang Qingzhu finished tending to the unconscious Qianqian and stood up. She took a deep breath to steady her emotions and stared coldly at the boy on the stage. She started walking toward him. The provocation was too obvious to ignore. Her rank 2, level 4 aura began to radiate. As she approached the platform, the boy on stage felt a cold sweat break out. He knew who she was, the eldest daughter of the Jiang family, an A-rank talent with an S-rank breathing method. He started running through her stats in his head, realizing this was about to get very real. Chen Deng felt the pressure mounting. He was only at the peak of rank 1, and honestly, his actual combat strength was mediocre at best. He felt a flicker of panic as Jiang Qingzhu approached, but he forced a smile and raised his voice, making sure everyone could hear him. Student Jiang, what exactly do you think you're doing? His loud voice cut through the noise, and the bickering crowd went silent. Hundreds of eyes shifted toward the stage. When they saw the cold, elegant girl stepping up, the atmosphere shifted. Her rank 2, level 4 aura was dense and suffocating. It was a physical weight that made the air feel heavy. You use strength to bully the weak, Jiang Qingzhu said, her voice like ice. So, I will use violence to suppress your violence. Chen Deng's heart leaped with joy. That was exactly the response he wanted. Since he needed to save his own strength for later, he turned to the crowd and smirked. Does anyone else want to experience the power of the Linhai High School team captain? I'm more than happy to step aside and give someone else the chance. Someone in the crowd caught his drift immediately. A student stepped forward, gritting his teeth. I'll do it. Jiang Qingzhu's eyes flashed with a hint of coldness. She saw right through them. They were trying to use human wave tactics to drain her stamina so they could cruise to an easy victory in the official matches later that afternoon. They had even put up temporary closure signs and sent away the duty teachers. It was a despicable setup. Luckily, she had already sent word to me. She just had to hold out until I arrived with the teacher. She summoned her snow-white spear, her aura flaring brilliantly. The first challenger didn't even last a second. She sent him flying off the platform with a single strike. But as soon as he hit the ground, another volunteer rushed up. Then another. It became a relentless cycle. As expected of the Jiang family's eldest daughter, Chun Deng muttered from the sidelines. His eyes flickered with calculation. A normal rank 1 martial artist stood no chance against her. Even if he went up, he wouldn't last more than a few rounds. "Don't worry, Brother Chun," a student beside him whispered. "We have 126 rank 1 martial artists here. She can't fight them all. 20 or 30 more, and her chi will be completely tapped out." Chun Deng nodded, feeling much more relaxed. The plan was working perfectly. He looked over at Liu Yongda, the Linhai vice captain, who was pacing around and looking like a clown. Chun Deng's lips curled into a sneer. "Brother Chun," another student approached, looking worried. "That guy Yili, he didn't come with the others. What if he hears about this and goes to find a teacher?" "Let him," Chun Deng said, shaking his head dismissively. "Our campus is huge. He's a stranger here. By the time he finds anyone and brings them back, the show will be over. And if he comes here directly, then we have even less to worry about." Outside the martial arts hall, in a small guard booth used to check IDs, a student was supposed to be on lookout. He was currently dozing off. Their plan only required 1 hour of uninterrupted time. They had already turned away several students from their own school who had wandered by. Suddenly, a figure appeared around the corner. The lookout caught a glimpse out of the corner of his eye, and his sleepiness vanished. He sat up straight. The newcomer wore black clothes that fluttered in the wind, his dark hair messy, his expression completely indifferent. "He's handsome," the student thought. Asterisk, "but he's not wearing our uniform. He must be from the other school." Asterisk. As I approached the booth, the student stood up and waved his hand. "Hey, student, this area is..." I didn't let him finish. I let out a cold snort and slammed my palm into the booth. A massive crash echoed as the structure shattered into pieces. The lookout was sent flying, hitting the ground hard and losing consciousness instantly. I didn't even give him a second glance. I kept moving toward the hall, my pace quickening until I was in a full sprint. I knew exactly what I was doing. I was circulating my chi, letting a cold frost aura coat my body. Even at this speed, I kept my presence tightly suppressed. I didn't want to scare them off before I got there. I wanted them to see me coming alone. I wanted them to feel confident. I could sense over 100 weak auras inside, all rank 1. It was a blatant trap designed to wear down Linhai's top fighters. But I didn't care. I didn't know who started this, and I didn't care what the Qingshan school administration thought. All I knew was that I was about to go on a rampage. I wasn't being reckless. I was being practical. I didn't have the principal's number, and searching for help in a strange school would take too long. By the time I brought a teacher, Jiang Qingzhu and the others would already be exhausted. The only way to provide real help was to inflict a level of damage the other side couldn't accept. They thought they knew our strength. They thought they had accounted for everyone. I was the variable they hadn't factored in. My villain points were running low, and this was the perfect opportunity to restock. My heart burned with a quiet excitement. The wind howled in my ears as my black clothes snapped in the gale. Using my wind-riding dragon technique to its full potential, I became a blur, slamming into the entrance of the hall like a tidal wave. Boom! The heavy wooden doors exploded inward. I crashed into the center of the room, surrounded by a swirling pressure of wind. Hundreds of stunned faces turned toward me. Even Jiang Qingzhu, who had just knocked another opponent away, looked up in surprise. As the dust settled, I stood there, calm and composed. "Boss!" Liu Yongda screamed from below the stage, his face lighting up with pure joy. "Oh my God, you actually came." Even a fool like Liu Yongda had realized something was wrong when he saw Jiang Qingzhu starting to struggle. He had tried to slip out for help, but the 100-plus Qingshan students had him pinned down. He had been desperate. Now, seeing the person who used to beat him like a dog, He felt like he was looking at a savior. Yili, Chun Ding muttered from the stands, his expression turning grim. He's here already? He was confused. Why hadn't the lookout warned them? Had the guy fallen asleep? He shook his head. It didn't matter. One more person wouldn't change the outcome. Or so he thought. Chun Ding looked behind me, scanning the entrance for any other students. When he saw I was alone, he let out a breath and didn't even try to hide his smirk. He clearly thought I was an idiot. In his eyes, I was just some hot-headed kid who heard his friends were in trouble and rushed in without thinking. He figured I hadn't noticed the trap or the massive gap in strength between us. He stood up, looking down at me from the stands with a mocking grin. He told me I had arrived at the perfect time and invited me to join their friendly exchange. While he spoke, the Qingshan students below began to shift. They moved quietly, blocking the exits and surrounding me. I watched their little maneuvers and couldn't help but laugh. I asked him how he wanted to do this. He smiled and said we should have a one-on-one duel on the stage. I looked at the crowd closing in and raised an eyebrow. I asked if one-on-one in Qingshan terms meant me fighting every single one of them. Chun Ding's brow furrowed. He asked me what I meant by that. I told him not to misunderstand. As I looked around, the true chi inside my body began to roar like a tidal wave. I looked up at him and told him that I actually really liked their version of a one-on-one. Chun Ding narrowed his eyes, asking if that meant I accepted. I told him that was a given. The second the words left my mouth, a thick, misty white vapor erupted from my skin. My entire body became semi-transparent, shimmering with an eerie light. The sight made Chun Ding's face pale. The pressure I was radiating didn't feel like a rank 1 martial artist at all. Something was wrong. It was beyond wrong. He tried to tell me to wait, but I didn't give him the chance. I vanished. When I reappeared, I was already standing in front of the Qingshan students. The white mist swirled around me like burning clouds, dancing like spirits. Before they could even blink, I stepped forward. My fist tore through the air with a deafening boom, slamming into the student at the very front. The sound of the impact was heavy and wet. Then came the sound of bones shattering. It was a sharp, sickening crack that made everyone's skin crawl. The force exploded through his body, sending him flying backward. He sprayed blood into the air, screaming as he crashed into several others behind him. They all smashed into the wall together with a violent thud. The whole thing happened like a lightning strike. It wasn't until the white chi around me flared up like flames that the others finally reacted. They gasped, their eyes filled with horror, and instinctively scrambled backward. Up in the stands, Chun Ding was speechless. He never expected me to be this ruthless. That single punch had just crippled 5 or 6 rank 1 students. They were so badly injured that it was doubtful they could even participate in the upcoming exams. Boom. Another explosion of concrete echoed through the hall. Chun Ding looked down to see more of his students coughing up blood and flying through the air, knocked unconscious instantly. His calm, arrogant composure finally shattered. I looked up and locked eyes with him. My gaze was cold, empty of any emotion. Chun Ding started to tremble. He roared at me, asking if I called this a friendly exchange. He screamed for me to stop. He leaped from the stands, unsheathing a brilliant, golden-heavy blade mid-air. He swung it down toward my head, activating his C-grade talent, Light-Gathering Blade. The rest of the Qingshan students snapped out of their shock. Fueled by rage and shame, they pulled out their weapons and swarmed me from all sides. As Chun Ding's blade descended, my blurred form accelerated. With my wind-riding dragon and heavenly step techniques pushed to perfection, my speed was on a completely different level. To the others, Chun Ding's strike was a blur of lethal light. To me, it looked like it was moving in slow motion. I dodged the blade effortlessly. Before Chun Ding could land, I reached out and grabbed him by the face. I slammed his head into the ground with everything I had. The floor exploded. Chun Ding's head was driven deep into the dirt. His body went rigid, sticking straight up in the air like a chopstick planted in a bowl of rice. He was out cold instantly. The room went silent. Jiang Qingzhu's breathing hitched. Lu Yongda and the others stood frozen, their throats dry. The remaining Qingshan students were paralyzed with disbelief. I had just one-shot Chun Ding. Not even their school instructors could do that. I exhaled a cloud of white mist and looked at the stunned crowd with a mocking smirk. I asked them if they wanted to keep going. Didn't they love using numbers to their advantage? The Qingshan students felt a chill run down their spines. It was like they had been dropped into a cellar of ice. Suddenly, one student shouted out, trying to rally the others. He pointed out that I was using massive amounts of true qi with every move. He argued that even a rank 2 martial artist couldn't keep this up for long. He claimed I was running on empty and just trying to bluff them to buy time to recover. The others perked up, their fear turning into desperate hope. They convinced themselves I was exhausted. The student who spoke first stared at me, convinced he saw a flash of paleness on my face. He screamed for everyone to attack together, wanting to see just how much qi I had left to squander. The fear in the crowd vanished, replaced by a frantic energy. They began to close in on me in a tight circle. Jiang Qingzhu frowned. She knew the student had a point. My attacks were flashy and incredibly wasteful. Based on her own qi reserves, she would have been 70% depleted by now. Since my rank was lower than hers, she assumed I was in even worse shape. She gripped her spear, preparing to charge in and back me up. I shot a cold glance at Jiang Qingzhu. The warning in my eyes was clear: stay back. She froze, looking at me with total confusion as I stood calmly in the middle of the mob. She didn't understand my confidence, but she respected my choice. She stayed her ground, though her eyes were still tight with worry. The Qingshan students surged forward. The closest one was barely 3 feet away when he noticed something strange. I had closed my eyes. The white mist swirling around me suddenly vanished, and my translucent aura turned solid. To him, it looked like I had finally run out of true qi. He started to smirk, thinking the fight was over. Then, a wave of pure terror hit him. It wasn't just him. Everyone nearby felt a bone-chilling cold that made their hair stand on end. They looked up and saw my eyes snap open. A flash of sky-blue light flickered in my pupils, cold as a frozen lake in the dead of winter. A violent storm exploded from my body. The temperature in the hall plummeted dozens of degrees in a heartbeat. A spiral of frost and snow blasted outward in every direction. Jiang Qingzhu's pupils shrunk to pinpricks. She recognized the move instantly. It was frost and snow everywhere. Her mind went blank with shock. I had only been given the manual for that breathing technique an hour ago. Mastering it this quickly was supposed to be impossible. I let out a soft, mocking laugh. The icy vortex swept across the room, swallowing dozens of martial artists. They tried to retreat, but the formation turned into a panicked mess. The storm consumed them before they could even scream. In their final moments of consciousness, they all had the same thought. How could a martial technique be this terrifying? The sound of the howling wind mixed with the sickening crunch of ice forming. It was a symphony of destruction. When the mist finally cleared, the arena was filled with dozens of lifelike ice sculptures. No matter how much the students inside struggled, they couldn't break free. The statues began to fall, hitting the floor with a series of sharp, rhythmic thuds. I exhaled a long trail of white mist and stepped through the frozen crowd. My true qi was finally running low, but the harvest was massive. The system notifications started ringing in my head like a slot machine. 1 rank, 1 peak martial artist defeated, 1,000 villain points. 17 mid-level students, 8,500 points. 46 low-level students, 13,800 points. My total jumped to 46,000 points. I had enough for a new treasure. I headed for the exit, feeling incredibly satisfied. I had made back everything I spent on the breathing manual, and then some. I looked back at Jiang Qingzhu and the others, who were still standing there in a daze. I gave them a casual wave and told them to clean up the mess before I walked out the door. Right outside the arena, I ran into Wang Yongfeng and a group of Qingshan teachers. They were laughing and chatting as they walked toward me. Wang Yongfeng looked surprised to see me so soon. He asked if I was finished and if I needed any help. I just nodded politely, said I was fine, and walked right past them. One of the Qingshan teachers remarked on how polite I seemed. Another one grumbled that I looked too refined, like a scholar instead of a warrior. They started debating my talent, wondering if I had awakened any special abilities yet. Wang Yongfeng just gave them a mysterious smile and told them they'd see during the afternoon matches. They stepped into the arena, still joking around. Then they saw the scene. The laughter died instantly. The teachers stood frozen, their faces turning pale. The arena was a disaster zone. Students were embedded in shattered walls, face down on the floor, or trapped in crystalline ice statues. There were irregular rings of frost scorched into the ground, marking the impact of a massive energy release. It looked like a war zone. Wang Yongfeng felt the world spinning. He nearly fell over when he realized all the students on the floor were the elite seniors from Qingshan High. The only people still standing were the students from my school. Wang Yongfeng's voice trembled as he asked the question everyone was thinking. He wanted to know who had done this. Jiang Qingzhu didn't hesitate. She stepped forward and claimed she was the one who did it. Lu Yongda felt a pang of jealousy and heartbreak. He knew she was lying to protect me. The cold, honest Jiang Qingzhu was actually covering for someone. One of the Qingshan teachers snapped out of his shock and started shouting. He didn't believe one person could take down 100 students. He demanded an explanation. Jiang Qingzhu cut him off with a cold stare. Her eyes glowed with that same icy blue light. A massive, ethereal figure of an ice queen appeared behind her, radiating a terrifying pressure. It was her A-rank talent. The teacher's face changed instantly. Another faculty member grabbed his arm and hissed at him to shut up. He whispered that she was the daughter of the Jiang family from the north. Suddenly, nobody wanted to ask any more questions. That teacher snapped back to reality instantly. The Jiang family from the north wasn't just any wealthy clan. They had high-level martial artists guarding their gates. They had personally suppressed Grade 2 disasters. To a family like that, crushing a common teacher was as easy as breathing. He had spent so long acting like a big shot in front of students that he forgot what a real titan looked like. He squeezed out a pathetic, awkward smile and looked at Jiang Qingzhu. He apologized, claiming he just got a bit excited. Jiang Qingzhu didn't even give him a second glance. She turned to Wang Yongfeng, her voice flat and indifferent. She told him that the students of Qingshan High were rotten to the core and loved using dirty tricks. She explained that they tried to attack us, but they didn't have the strength to pull it off, so they ended up like this. She told him he could write in the official report that she did it alone, or that all 6 of us did it together. She didn't care. With that, she leaped off the stage, picked up the still unconscious Yu Qianqian, and walked out of the arena. The Qingshan teachers were left staring at each other in silence. Wang Yongfeng watched her fading figure, his heart racing. He had been a coach for years and knew her personality well. If Jiang Qingzhu had really done this, the scene wouldn't be so clean. She wouldn't have lifted a finger unless someone stepped onto the actual dueling platform. In his mind, there was only one person in the entire team with such a sharp, aggressive combat style and the power to back it up. It was the boy from Mozhan who had greeted him so politely only 5 minutes before the chaos started. I had hidden my cards well. An hour later, the Qingshan City Hospital was buzzing. In a spacious, quiet ward, 2 long rows of beds were filled with students covered in thick bandages and head casts. These were the elites from Qingshan High. Most were still unconscious. Even with advanced medical technology, the doctors were exhausted. The injuries were too severe, and there were too many of them. The head doctor was in shock, wondering who Qingshan High had offended to get half their senior class sent to the ER. It looked like a monster invasion had hit the city. He hadn't seen 100 martial artists carried in like this in decades. In a private room next door, Su Ligong, the head coach for Qingshan High, stood by a bed with a dark expression. He looked down at Chen Deng and asked for clarification. He couldn't believe his ears. He asked if Chen Deng had really initiated the fight and then gotten flattened. Chen Deng lowered his head in shame. The thick bandages on his face hid his eyes, but his voice was trembling. He didn't want to admit it, but there were too many witnesses. If the school investigated, the truth would come out anyway. He figured confessing now might get him some leniency. Besides, he assumed that even if I had knocked him out, the 100 other students must have torn our team apart. He thought Linhai High must be in even worse shape, which was why the atmosphere felt so heavy. Su Ligong's face turned green with rage. He shouted at Chen Deng, asking how 100 grade 1 martial artists could lose to 6 people. He told him there was a limit to lying. The school's provincial exams were ruined. There was nobody left to take them. Half the senior martial arts department was currently rotting in hospital beds. Su Ligong's voice rose to a scream, the veins on his neck bulging. If these students didn't get healed by a high-level support ability, they'd be out for 2 months. By then, the exams would be over. He had expected to hear that Linhai Hai attacked first so he could demand compensation. Instead, he got a confession that proved Qingshan Hai brought this on themselves. He clenched his fists, refusing to accept that 6 people could take down 100. Chen Deng was stunned. He had assumed we were the ones who got wiped out. He couldn't wrap his head around it. There were nearly 200 martial arts students in the senior class, the elite of the city. How could 100 of them lose to 6? It didn't make sense. Even if we were just eating 100 steamed buns, it would take all morning to finish them. He asked, his voice shaking, how many people were actually in the hospital. Su Ligong gave a cold, bitter laugh. He told him there were 126 students, all seriously injured. The entire force had been annihilated. Chen Deng felt the world spinning. His mind went blank. With over 100 elites incapacitated, Qingshan Hai was going to rank dead last in the entire province. His perfect plan had resulted in a total disaster. He kept wondering where it went wrong. He looked at his coach, breathing heavily, and asked if there were really only 6 of them. He claimed he was knocked out early and suggested we must have brought outside help or used some forbidden weapon. Suddenly, a calm, cold, and noble voice cut through the room. The voice told him he was half right. The door creaked open. Chen Deng and Su Ligong both snapped their heads toward the sound. A girl stepped into the room, dressed in a black and white robe. She wore a white jade belt around her waist, and her eyes were sharp, filled with an intimidating edge. A dense, cold sword intent radiated from her body. It was Tang Yao. She was the young mistress of the Sword Pavilion and the true backbone of Qingshan Hai. She walked up to Chen Deng's bed and looked down at him with a mocking gaze. Her voice was playful but cold. She told him he was right about one thing. It wasn't 6 people who had sent 100 students to the hospital. Chen Deng perked up instantly. A look of relief washed over his face. He muttered that he knew it. He couldn't believe 6 people could have caused that much damage. He thought he had been right all along. Tang Yao's voice cut through his relief like a bucket of ice water. She told him to shut up because she wasn't finished. Chen Deng froze. Su Ligong felt a knot form in his stomach. He had a bad feeling. He wondered if Jiang Qingzhu had actually been the one behind it. Then, Tang Yao let out a mocking laugh. She revealed the truth. It wasn't 6 people. All 100 elite students had been wiped out by a single person. I was the one. I had torn through their entire force alone. The room went silent. Su Ligong was the most shocked of all. As a martial arts teacher, he knew exactly how impossible that sounded. 1 person defeating 100? He stared at Tang Yao, asking if she was joking. Tang Yao shrugged. She said she had already questioned over a dozen survivors. The joke wasn't funny anymore. Even knowing I had taken down 100 people, her proud face didn't show a hint of fear. Chen Deng collapsed back onto his pillow. He let out a bitter, broken laugh. He couldn't believe there was another genius like her in the province. In his mind, Tang Yao was peerless. Even Jiang Qingzhu, with her A-rank talent, couldn't compare to the girl he worshipped. He had seen Tang Yao hold off an entire school with a single blade. He had spent his life chasing her shadow, hoping to catch up. Now he realized it was a pipe dream. My performance reminded him too much of her. Tang Yao frowned. Unlike Chen Deng, she didn't think I was her equal. She just thought I was interesting. She didn't bother explaining this to Chen Deng. To her, people like him were destined to be mediocre. They weren't worth her time. She turned to leave. She had come for information, and now she had it. There was nothing left to see. She needed to prepare for the afternoon exchange match. Su Ligong sighed heavily. He looked at Chen Deng and told him the match was over. He planned to withdraw the team so they could recover. Tang Yao stopped in her tracks. She turned around, looking at the teacher with pure dissatisfaction. She asked him who said anything about withdrawing. Su Ligong was stunned. He pointed out that 6 of their 7 team members were seriously injured. Tang Yao didn't blink. She asked him, so what? Su Ligong didn't know how to respond. To any normal person, the choice was obvious. But Tang Yao wasn't normal. She had pushed her B-rank talent to the level of an A-rank. She was at the peak of the 2nd order, 6th layer, and possessed countless secret techniques. She had every right to be arrogant. Su Ligong took a deep breath. For some reason, her confidence was contagious. He asked her what she intended to do. Tang Yao's eyes flashed with a hint of a smile that vanished as quickly as it appeared. A terrifying sword intent erupted from her, feeling as though it might split the hospital building in half. She looked up and said she would be competing. Su Ligong tried to mention my name again, but she cut him off. She admitted I was decent, but that was it. She claimed that clearing out a bunch of shrimp and crabs was something anyone could do. It wasn't worth bragging about. She made one thing clear. In the upcoming match, we were the challengers, and she was the one at the top. Meanwhile, in a high-end hotel in the center of Qingshan City, I was sitting on my bed. I felt a bit heavy-hearted. Wang Yongfeng had told me that Qingshan High would likely forfeit the match because they lacked players. My plan to beat up their genius sword girl was going up in smoke. If the match didn't happen, I wouldn't get any villain points. I sighed and tried to calm down. I pulled up my system panel. Current villain points, 46,000. I could finally draw for a noble phantasm. Even with my calm nature, I couldn't help but smile at that number. Nobody stays grumpy when their bank account is full. Those 100 students might have been weak, but they were plenty. They had provided a massive haul. I had started to figure out how the system worked. I only got a normal amount of points from martial artists who actually felt hostility toward me. When I had trained Jiang Qingzhu, I went hard on her to farm points, but since she didn't hate me, I only got double digits. It seemed the system had a way to prevent me from farming points indefinitely. Regardless, I had the breathing technique now. I could start dumping points into my cultivation level. It had only been a few days, but I was ready to jump ahead. Before that, I looked at a new feature on the panel. It seemed that as I gathered more points, the system unlocked new functions. When I beat Wang Run, I got the ability to add points to my cultivation. Now I saw something else. I really needed a good spear-type weapon. I focused my mind, and the text on the screen shifted. One draw cost 1,000 villain points. The Noble Phantasm Roulette contained legendary items from across the heavens. Anything was possible. There was even a pity system. 40 draws guaranteed a gold-quality item. I took a breath. It was time to gamble. No wonder this Noble Phantasm Roulette only appeared after I hit 40,000 villain points. The system must have sensed I was ready to go all in. It was tempting me to gamble. I looked at the screen and gave a cold laugh. I wasn't some desperate addict, but a new feature was right in front of me. If I didn't try at least one pull, I wouldn't be human. I clicked. A purple light flashed, illuminating my face. It wasn't gold, but a purple rare quality item wasn't bad for a first try. I checked the stats. It was a functional item called the Ring of Harmonious Coexistence. The effect was simple. It consumed true chi to force all enemies within a 5-meter radius to kneel. The higher the enemy's level, the more chi it drained. It had a 1-day cooldown. I stared at the ring, speechless. Harmonious coexistence? If I forced someone to kneel, the last thing we'd be doing is getting along. It didn't have a rank, only a quality, but the effect was perfect for someone like me. My eyes gleamed. A knock at the door broke my focus. Are you still resting? Jiang Qingzhu's voice sounded surprised. Qingshan Hai didn't forfeit. They're calling us over for the match. I stood up, a slow smile spreading across my face. So, instead of running away, they were coming straight for me? Tang Yao had guts. I had to give her that much. We arrived at the Qingshan High Martial Arts Arena. It was massive, easily as big as the one at our school. The stands were packed with over 1,000 students, and the noise was deafening. Everyone was talking about the same thing. I heard only Senior Tang is competing today, one student whispered. Why? That's embarrassing. Don't you know? Our entire school team was sent to the hospital by that Jiang Qingzhu girl this morning. Tang Yao is the only one left who can fight. Are you kidding? Is she really that strong? It's true. Look at the empty seats over there. Half the martial arts department is missing. They're all in the infirmary. The crowd was nervous, but they weren't hopeless. They had seen Tang Yao win a 7-on-1 match before. To them, as long as Tang Yao was standing, Qingshan Hai hadn't lost. She was their white moonlight, a sword genius who had supposedly defeated a peak second-stage veteran in a real fight. I ignored the gossip and walked into the prep room. I scanned the weapon rack and picked up a plain, black spear. It was a standard first-stage weapon, nothing special. I really needed a spear-type noble phantasm. I wondered if the roulette could give me something legendary, like the golden cudgel. I gripped the spear, and my aura sharpened instantly. I hadn't spent my points to level up yet, so I was still at second stage, level 1. It didn't matter. I could level up after I finished this. I walked out to the sidelines. Jiang Qingzhu was already there, sitting alone. "Did you find a weapon?" she asked, standing up. "It'll do," I said casually. She looked at the basic spear and frowned. "My family has a lot of spear noble phantasms at home. They're perfect for second or third stage warriors. I'll bring you one next time." I sat down and sighed. Must be nice to be rich. Why couldn't I have been born into a family like hers? We sat in silence as the crowd's chanting grew louder. They were obsessed with Tang Yao. Jiang Qingzhu opened her eyes and looked at me. I was staring down, wiping the tip of my spear. "Tang Yao is very strong," she warned quietly. "She knows a lot of techniques. Even I would struggle against her. You're going up first. Watch out for her slashes." She noticed my heart rate was picking up. She probably thought I was nervous because we were on enemy turf, surrounded by people cheering for my defeat. I just nodded. I wasn't nervous. I was excited. I hadn't realized Tang Yao was such a big deal here. If her reputation was this high, the villain points I'd get from crushing her would be massive. This was a goldmine. 10 minutes until start. Our teacher, Wang Yongfeng, called out as he approached with the rest of the team. "Get ready." I stood up and headed toward the entrance tunnel. Across the arena, the Qingshan High instructor, Su Ligong, was sweating. He knew the pressure was on. 2 VIPs had arrived to watch, an elder from the Qingshan Sword Pavilion and a scout from Fengyan University. The scout was looking for talent, but the elder was specifically there to see Tang Yao. If she lost the very first round, the school's reputation would be ruined. Everything rested on this match. As the instructor, Su Ligong knew he'd be the first one held responsible if things went south. I could see his body trembling slightly from across the arena. Then, the referee's voice boomed over the speakers, cutting through the tension. The 5th annual City Exchange Tournament had officially begun. First match, Yili from Linhai High versus Tang Yao from Qingshan High. The moment my name was called alongside hers, the stands erupted. The roar was deafening, a wall of sound that felt like it could split the clouds. It was clear Tang Yao wasn't just a student here. She was an icon. Su Ligong took a deep breath and looked at the girl sitting nearby. Her eyes were half closed, radiating a calm, sharp energy. He asked the one question every Qingshan student wanted to know. "Can you win?" Humph. A sharp, arrogant sound escaped her throat as she stood up. Amidst the frantic cheering, Tang Yao opened her eyes. She tucked her hands into the sleeves of her black and white robe, her clothes fluttering in the wind. "I will win," she said. Her voice was cold and casual. She walked toward the tunnel, stepping into the blinding light of the arena. She carried the hopes of thousands of students on her shoulders. Most people would have crumbled under that kind of pressure, but she looked like she was born for it. She stepped onto the combat platform with slow, deliberate movements. Her posture was composed, her gaze incredibly sharp. Standing there, she looked less like a girl and more like a legendary sword, making everything around her seem dull by comparison. A soft hum vibrated through the air. The white jade belt at her waist flashed, and a straight sword engraved with golden dragon patterns materialized in her hand. Behind her, her school was screaming her name. In front of her, I stood there, leaning on my spear with a relaxed smile. "Impressive," I said, not even trying to hide my surprise. I've never faced an opponent with this much hype before. Tang Yao looked at me with indifferent eyes. Her thin lips curled into a mocking sliver of a smile. "That's because you're ignorant. Also, don't get things twisted." She paused, her tone dripping with ridicule. "You are the challenger here. I am the wall you can't climb." Up in the VIP viewing gallery, the teachers and experts were already dissecting us. They noted that Tang Yao was at the peak of the second stage, level 6. She possessed a B-class talent called True Sword Heart. Then they looked at me. Second stage, level 1. No recorded talent. To them, the gap was astronomical. The physical difference alone was massive, not to mention combat experience. They weren't even debating who would win anymore. They were just wondering how much of Tang Yao's energy I could waste before I went down. The elder from the Qingshan Sword Pavilion nodded in approval, already planning for Tang Yao to enter the elite Fengyan University. He tried to get a guarantee from the university scout, Yuang, But the old man played it cool. He praised her sword aura, but insisted she should enter through the normal exams. He wanted to see if she was the real deal first. Down on the platform, Tang Yao's confidence was overflowing. Even though I had supposedly beaten 100 first-stage warriors on my own, I was nothing to her. Man, people are so full of themselves these days, I muttered to myself. Is this how all geniuses act? If so, I really need to start picking fights with more of them. I looked up at her and shrugged. Fine, I'm the challenger. Just don't go crying to your teacher when you lose. Your hypothetical is meaningless, Tang Yao replied, her grip tightening on her sword. Her internal energy began to circulate at high speeds. Because I don't lose. She slowly nudged her blade out of its scabbard with her thumb. Her eyes turned ice cold. I'm going to show you how pathetic your thoughts are in the face of true talent. I felt a grin spread across my face. A cold, humorless one. If you think you can, then come and try. Initially, I just wanted the villain points. But now, her arrogance was actually starting to piss me off. In her eyes, I saw confidence and contempt, but not a shred of respect. I'm a polite guy. I usually try to settle things peacefully in my own way. But I have a special spot in my heart for humbling geniuses who lack manners. Begin, the referee shouted. The air exploded. At the exact moment the command left his lips, a sound like a thunderclap echoed through the arena. Tang Yao turned into a streak of white light, lunging straight for me. It was a second-stage high-level technique, lightning flash. She lived up to her reputation. Her sword cut through the air at an impossible speed, aiming to end the match in a single strike. I gripped my black spear, my internal energy surging like a tidal wave. I didn't hold back. I immediately triggered the Heavenly Star Void steps. She was level 6. I was level 1. Common sense said I should play it safe and look for an opening. But I was angry. And when I'm angry, I don't play nice. Mist like white chi erupted around me, making my body appear translucent. As her sword swung down, it passed right through a cloud of white vapor. I wasn't there. Tang Yao's eyes widened. I let out a sharp laugh and swung my heavy spear in a massive arc. The weapon hissed through the air, leaving a visible trail like dragon scales. The power behind the swing was immense, the cold tip of the spear screaming toward her. Light burst from my weapon as I swung the heavy spear down like a diving dragon. A sharp, ringing sound of a blade echoed through the air. Tang Yao didn't panic. She held her sword horizontally in front of her, and a massive, translucent image of a giant sword rose from the ground. It stood several stories high, radiating a heavy, immovable pressure. It looked like a mountain. But my dragon-like strike was built to shatter mountains. The spear slammed down like the weight of Mount Tai. The sound of the air screaming under the pressure was deafening. The moment the spear tip touched that massive sword phantom, the unbreakable defense exploded. Shards of sword energy flew everywhere. The entire arena shook violently as if hit by an earthquake. Tang Yao was sent flying backward, her body skidding across the stone. Blood leaked from the corner of her mouth, and her delicate hand trembled uncontrollably as she gripped her sword. The crowd went dead silent for a heartbeat before erupting. The students from Qingshan City looked like they'd seen a ghost. Senior Tang was blown away. Is that Yili cheating? How did he break her defense? What the hell was that? They were screaming in disbelief. Usually, when Tang Yao fought someone at a lower level, the match ended in seconds. But not only had I easily countered her attack, I had literally shattered her strongest defense and sent her tumbling. On the platform, Tang Yao's heart was racing. She looked at me with wide, shaken eyes. This was the first time anyone had ever smashed her giant sword phantom through sheer force. That was a high-level second-stage technique she had spent a year mastering. Even a peak second-stage martial arts master hadn't been able to break it before. She realized it wasn't just my raw strength. The white light glowing on my spear tip had a terrifying armor-breaking effect. She guessed I was using a high-level technique of my own, trained to a frightening degree. She quickly calmed herself down while in midair. To her, a little armor penetration was just a trick. She still didn't think I was a real threat. Up in the VIP seats, the teachers who thought this match was a foregone conclusion sat up straight. This kid Yili. He's interesting. Principal, you said, his voice full of surprise. That white mist around him is incredible. It's cutting the damage from her sword energy by at least 70%. In his memory, only a handful of low-level techniques could do that, and all of them were extremely difficult to learn. To get that kind of result, I must have reached a level of mastery that was nearly perfect. Combined with my spear technique, it meant I had mastered 2 top-tier skills in just 3 years. To them, my talent for martial arts looked terrifying. Even if he can reduce damage and break armor, he won't beat her. The Sword Pavilion Elder muttered, his face grim. Our young Pavilion Master's sword path is too strong. She can tear right through his defense. He wasn't just being stubborn. He knew Tang Yao's hidden cards were dangerous enough to threaten even a third-stage warrior. Back on the stage, Tang Yao stabilized herself. Her boots skidded across the ground for 30 feet before she stopped the momentum. She looked up, her sharp eyes freezing over as she stared at me through the white mist. "Is that all you've got?" I asked, leaning on my spear with a mocking grin. "Arrogant," she snapped. Her voice was cold, but I could hear the frustration bubbling underneath. Her pride was still rock solid. She truly believed she could still crush me. Thunder clapped again. Tang Yao turned back into a streak of blinding white light, charging straight at me with everything she had. I didn't move. I just stood there calmly and reached out a hand toward the incoming light. The crowd had no idea what I was doing, but then a ring on my finger began to glow with a strange, shimmering light. The blinding white streak stopped dead in midair. Tang Yao's face went completely blank. Her body suddenly moved against her will. In front of everyone, she dropped out of the air and slammed onto the stage. Hard. Her knees hit the stone with a loud thud that echoed through the stadium. The goddess of Qingshan City was now kneeling on the ground. Because of her momentum, she didn't just stop. She slid across the floor on her knees until she was right at my feet. The silence that followed was suffocating. Over 1,000 people were staring, mouths open, frozen in shock. The atmosphere went from electric to ice-cold in a second. Asterisk ding. Publicly humiliating the proud young pavilion master of the Sword Pavilion. Villain points plus 1,500, asterisk. Tang Yao looked down at her knees, her mind a complete mess. Asterisk, what am I doing? Why did I just kneel to this commoner? Asterisk. Rage, hotter than anything she'd ever felt, surged through her. Her elegant eyes looked like they were about to spray fire. She looked up at me, her teeth grinding so hard I thought they might break. "You?" Before she could finish, my hands blurred. I grabbed her face, pinning her head in place. Then, I drove my knee upward like a lunging tiger. The wind pressure alone was enough to sting. My knee slammed into her beautiful, arrogant face with a dull thud. Her features contorted in pain. Her head snapped back, stars dancing in her vision. Whatever insult she was about to scream was knocked right back down her throat. "It's a fight," I whispered with a cold laugh. "Why are you trying to chat?" I stepped forward, closing the distance instantly. The harmonious coexistence ring was even better than I thought. It was basically a one-time stunt spell. I reached out and palmed her entire face, slamming her head toward the ground. Part of her was terrified, but most of her was just consumed by fury. I had used my knee to hit her face. I had made her kneel. And instead of using my spear to finish the fight, I was manhandling her like she wasn't even worth using a weapon on. She had never been humiliated like this in her life. "You're dead," she screamed, her internal energy exploding. She forced herself out of the daze, and a terrifying burst of sword chi erupted from her body. The visibility on the stage plummeted instantly. Sharp sword chi filled the air like thousands of unsheathed blades, swirling into a storm that swallowed me whole. I heard the sickening sound of blades piercing flesh. "Poochie! Poochie!" The sounds echoed one after another. Tang Yao used the chaos to retreat, putting distance between us. She stared at my thin silhouette standing amidst the storm of blades. Her eyes were cold. She thought she had already won. "That was your only chance to beat me," she muttered. "Since you couldn't take it, don't blame me for what happens next." She gripped her sword tight, her voice dropping to a freezing temperature. "You're just trash." Her stance shifted. A massive amount of energy began to brew inside her body. The students in the stands recognized the form immediately. They started screaming in excitement. It was the Mount Tai holding the sun technique. In the next second, a terrifying sword intent erupted from her. A violent wind whipped around her body. This was a third-tier genuine martial technique. Even in the secret archives of the Green Mountain Sword Pavilion, this was considered top tier. She wasn't planning to drag this out anymore. She wanted to end me with a single strike. A brilliant light, as blinding as the sun, burst from her blade. It moved with the momentum of a falling mountain, crashing down toward me. She had mastered this move to the point of perfection. 1 second to breathe, 1 second to strike. This was the move she used to defeat warriors levels above her. To her, the result was already decided. The sword light swallowed my figure completely. Then came the explosion. A deafening roar shook the entire arena. The shockwave was so intense that students in the front rows covered their ears, their eyes squinting against the gale. The power of that single strike was horrifying. As the dust settled, the crowd went wild. "Tang Yao won," they shouted. The teachers on the high platform nodded in approval, silently acknowledging her strength. Tang Yao exhaled slowly, sheathing her sword. She calculated her remaining energy. She felt she had enough left for 5 more matches. But as she relaxed, a sudden, intense wave of unease washed over her. Her heart hammered against her ribs, as if an invisible hand were squeezing it. She instinctively drew her sword again, staring into the thick dust. 2 glowing, golden eyes suddenly ignited in the haze. They looked like burning flames. A crushing pressure rolled out, heavy as a mountain, pinning her in place. Then, a cold, emotionless voice reached her ears. "Is this what you call being serious?" It was my voice, but I sounded indifferent, almost bored. It was the tone of someone who had expected a challenge and found nothing but disappointment. The words stung her heart like a needle. Before she could even get angry, a chill ran down her spine. The dust cleared. I stepped out, my back straight, my black school uniform tattered and fluttering in the wind. My hair moved slightly, my eyes glowing with that predatory gold light. "Stop acting mysterious," she screamed. She gripped her sword, unleashing every bit of her second-tier, 6th-stage cultivation. She could feel the danger radiating off me now. I didn't say a word. I just kept walking forward, calm and composed. My blood was boiling like a furnace. I had activated my golden soul awakening. My physical stats had jumped by 300%. It wasn't just a power boost, it was a total transformation. It felt like I had entered a state of absolute peak performance. The wounds from her sword chi healed in the blink of an eye. I reached down, plucked my long spear from the ground, and blurred forward. I was in front of her in a heartbeat. I gripped the spear tight. The muscles in my back bunched up, forming the shape of a grinning demon. I swung the spear with everything I had. Tang Yao's face turned pale. She desperately raised her sword to block, a giant phantom blade appearing around her for protection. I didn't care. The dragon scales on my spear shimmered as I smashed it into her defense. Boom. With just a fraction of my new strength, her sword phantom shattered instantly. Her blade let out a high-pitched wail of protest. Tang Yao trembled, forced back step by step. Her face was full of terror. Her arms were completely numb, and she could barely lift them. A single hit had stripped away most of her fighting spirit. She didn't have time to process it. I was already there again. Her pupils shrank. She tried to raise her sword one last time. My black spear swept across in a heavy arc. Clang! The golden dragon sword she had carried for years snapped in half. The spear continued its path, slamming into her ribs. I heard the bones snap. Tang Yao felt like she had been hit by a high-speed truck. Her internal organs felt like they were being crushed. Her mind went blank. She went flying, tumbling across the stone floor before skidding to a halt. A low, pained groan escaped her lips. She curled up on the ground, coughing up mouthfuls of blood. The proud, arrogant goddess was gone. Tears welled up in the corners of her eyes as her broken sword slid from her fingers. Everything she was proud of, her talent, her cultivation, her status, felt like a joke. She had been crushed by someone who had only just reached the 2nd tier. It was humiliating. She struggled to breathe, trying to push herself up from the floor. But just as she moved, a shoe stepped firmly onto her face. Her cheek deformed under the sole of my shoe. Tang Yao froze. Her heart went cold. Tears of pure humiliation began to fall. She wanted to fight back, but she couldn't even move a finger. She could only stare up at me with eyes full of resentment and pain. The crowd was silent. The students who worshipped her looked on in horror. The girl they didn't even dare to speak to was currently being trampled under my foot. The crowd couldn't believe what they were seeing. It was beyond excessive. It was pure, unfiltered arrogance. I could see the rage boiling in their eyes. Their fists were clenched so tight their knuckles turned white. They wanted to scream, to rush me, to stop the humiliation. Then I looked at them. I swept my gaze across the room, my eyes cold and steady. The anger in the air vanished instantly. A wave of icy fear washed over every single one of them. They shut their mouths and stayed back. No one dared to move. Tang Yao was still pinned beneath my boot. I could feel her trembling, drowning in her own shame. I looked down at her, my voice dripping with cold superiority. I shifted my grip on the black spear. I lowered the sharp, dark tip until it rested right against the center of her chest. She gasped, her breath hitching in her throat. Then, I slowly slid the cold metal upward. I used the flat of the spearhead to gently pat her swollen, red cheek. It was a mocking gesture, like a master disciplining a stray dog. My expression remained indifferent, but my golden eyes burned with a fierce, majestic light. I leaned in, my voice turning playful and cruel. Tang Yao, I said, to be honest, you're just a waste. I felt her heart skip a beat under my foot. Her whole body tensed up, the weight of those words hitting her harder than any physical blow. She was broken, and we both knew it.